Swims it. Steps up. Now will throw it for Monanga. And it's incomplete. Oh, it's tipped. It's intercepted. It was tipped into the hands of Hancock. And Hancock along the near sideline. He's got a blocker. One man to beat. Flags come flying in. And Hancock is into the end zone. Right now, touchdown, Ohio State.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
All right, Matt, and some spin cycles there. We've had some here. We got a big stage for Kansas with the ball up by 3, and Jason Bean wants to throw. Deep shot. Arnold! He is gone!
Oh my goodness.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
This is Price bringing it out, trying to return of his own. Now Jadarian Price turning on the Jets. 20-10 touchdown Notre Dame.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
As this is Sione Faki on the direct snap, and Faki around the outside. There it goes down the sideline. Sione Faki, touchdown Utah.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Here's Schrader in a huge hole. He'll take it in, and Missouri's got a 2-score lead.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Missouri still trying to get set from the end zone. Cook throws one. It's intercepted. House call from Major Burns. And LSU is going to escape Columbia with a win.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Here we go on this Thursday afternoon with glorious weather. I hope it's like that where you are. It's very much spring-like. And again, not going to last so long, but it's very nice where we are. And I've even heard from some of you around the country that you're getting this kind of weather too. It is still February. It's hard to imagine that the way it feels right now. We will have a lot about the college football playoff already moving from 4 to 12 and how everyone wants to jump into another number of 14 or 16. Quotes from a Ross Dellinger article from Yahoo Sports, even some quotes from Nick Saban to ESPN to Chris Lowe. We'll get into that. Also an NCAA rule on official visits. And then a lot when it comes to EA Sports, Matt Brown among some others. And a couple of tweets today that made me laugh. That's the good things I think about Twitter when we have that chance. Max Olson, he'll join us today. Graham Coffey, who covers Georgia, I brought him up yesterday about how he was looking at, how the Big 12 and ACC shouldn't have any automatic qualifiers. He and I have traded some things back and forth. He's good enough to come on today to discuss his side and point of view, and I think it's healthy to get everybody's point of view if you disagree or not. Craig, with a loaded off the radar, Paul's top five, Mickey Spagnola on the Cowboys. Garrett Ross runs the mothership, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak. All right, Ross Dellinger. And I just read, by the way, an article from Dan Wetzel from Yahoo about can they just take a deep damn breath and let's get to 12 and test run it for a little bit. Change is coming. This is the tweet from yesterday evening. This is not a surprise, but new models that would grant automatic qualifiers, 10 or 12 total, to the 4 power conferences in a 14-team format with 2 byes. Now, we did get into some of this yesterday. But here are some details from the article with Ross Dellinger from last night that I want to peel out and we will discuss along the way. Multiple iterations of an automatic qualifying structure granting a varying number of auto bids to the Big 10, SEC, ACC, Big 12, according to those with knowledge of the discussions. It was a 9-hour meeting. The group of 5 retained its singular automatic qualifying spot in several of the models. As many as 12 automatic qualifiers were discussed in a 14-team field. A playoff would include byes to the number 1 and 2 ranked teams, not the top 4. The additional playoff games in a 14-team bracket would presumably be played at home field. Remember, we talked about some of those schools with a bye would like to have that home field, the higher seed based on the current format, and then, of course, 5 through 8, 9 through 12, etc. More automatic qualifying bids could increase the value of the regular season as teams jockey to position for conference standings. AQs also remove, Paul, the subjectivity from the College Football Playoff Committee under fire from what happened with Florida State. And finally, if in fact the high number of automatic qualifiers, whether it's 4, 3, or 2 for particular conferences or all of them, may remove some of the incentive to hold conference championship games, which are played because a bunch of money.
Yes, the top 5 will go over this later, too, in the show where we can kind of compact it again and bookend the show with this. But so if you gave – so this is the, like, nefarious plan, right? If you decide that you have to have 3 automatic qualifiers, the only way to get the Big 12 or the ACC to go along with you is say, like, no, you guys can have them, too. Like, that'll be fine. Because if you do 3, 3, and 3, the 4, that's 12, and you go to 16, then your at-larges would, you'd have 4 at-larges out there, or I guess 3 at-larges in one group of 5.
They're not doing 3, 3, 3, 3.
Yeah.
It's not going to be all equal. It's going to be 4, 4, 2, 2.
Yeah. Or it's going to be a certain number, but 2 conferences get a bigger chunk of the pie no matter what. How many qualifiers they get, automatic qualifiers you get. But, yeah, there's no way
I think it's going to be SEC gets 4, Big 10 gets 4, Big 12 gets 2, ACC gets 2, and then you have the leftover.
If, in fact, that's the case, you cannot then give up more money to the other conferences per year. That would be suicidal.
I just say that to jump in because there's no way they're doing 3, 3, 3, 3. Like, it's not going to be equal. We've established that with all of the conversation around this.
I would not look. If I'm the Big 12 or the ACC and everyone else, I would fight with every weapon I had in my arsenal, of which obviously is nothing. But like
I'm going to shoot you. Do you have any bullets in the gun? No.
Everything I had to go, no, look, I'll give you, if we're only going to have 2, then you can have 3. So it would be 3, 3, 2, 2, and then that gets you to 10, and then you still have 4 to 6 spots that are at large. Now, I do have a theory on the SEC, which the reason I think Greg Sankey did not want automatic qualifiers and said that in there, even though it could theoretically benefit him, is if that you put a minimum on any conference to get in. So if you say that the SEC gets 4 and the Big 10 gets 4, that means that you could never theoretically get your maximum, which is what he would really want. So, because if you are giving away some of the spots that would be at larges to teams that you could get in, especially, like I said yesterday, if one of those last Big 10 teams is 15th and your last team is 12th, but because you're 4 already in and they have to jump them, then, now we have superpowers. We've got a Cold War, right? And so that's why.
And shenanigans that would go with it.
Yeah. And so that's why I think Greg Sankey said no automatic qualifiers, because he is bound and determined, like he has said many times, and especially many times recently, that one of these things is not like the other, and one day I'll be able to prove it to you. And if he gets 7 teams in the playoff, he can go, see?
Yeah. Yep.
The day they get 7 teams in the playoff is the day college football's jumped the shark. Because I'm sorry, but the 7th place team does not deserve a crack at the national championship from any damn conference. I'll tell you that right now.
But telling him he can only have 4 means he can't get 5 or 6.
No, I agree with that.
He could reasonably have to field some seasons.
Yeah, it's the same thing we discussed yesterday. Can we let the damn season play itself out? And if you end up with 4 or 5 or whatever, God bless you. But I know that we can't just do that. We can't just let something. Back in the 80s, when the SEC had 4 automatic qualifiers, In the 90s, would the SEC have had 4 automatic qualifiers? It would have been more of the Big 8. Or would it have been something else? Or would it have been the Pac-12?
In the 80s, there would have been independence.
Now, they've had a great run for over 2 decades now. I get that. I understand the trends, and that's why Graham Coffey, we're going to have him on today in about an hour. But, God, some just in the NFL powerhouse for 20 years, and now they're okay, and now the South Division's better. Let this thing let it run its course year by year. But there we are with that.
I just think that there's a lot more to work out with it. Like I agree with you on the look. They haven't even done 12 yet. Like they
That's
don't.
what I'm saying.
They haven't even 12, so they're trying to tweak it already. Now, part of the reason they're trying to tweak it already is that they've painted themselves into this corner by not having a television deal for it. And if they're going to sign a television deal that extends beyond 2025, ESPN wants to know what they're paying for. And what you guys want to do.
Yeah, what they're paying for? They're paying for the 12 best teams to play each other and get to a national championship game.
ESPN wants to know what they're paying for in 2026. And they want to know that now because they want to get the deal done.
No, I get that part.
So that's why the powers that be have kind of painted themselves in this corner where now we have to come up with the format's going to be in the future before we've even played out the 12-team format. And if you tell ESPN before you even play the 12-team format and see how that works and see if everybody's happy with it, that's not even good enough. That's just what we came with for now. And we're going to go to 14 or 16 and create other issues on the back end. Man, it's really something, which again stands to the let's just everybody stand up and say what your intentions are for the future of college football and build it in the way that it's going to be, as opposed to pretending like, no, I care about you, Sun Belt Conference. You're a vital part of what we do.
Yeah. Anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I got plenty because, that's what we do is we talk about all these possibilities. And I get your whole, let's let it settle, but okay, then we better have about a 20-minute show because 90% of it's that kind of stuff, and especially with it being the hot topic right now, that's the whole thing.
No. You misunderstood what I'm saying. I'm talking about the number of teams. I'm talking about the fact that someone would get automatic qualifiers just because of their history and tradition. Just because of what happened last year, what happened 5 years ago, what happened the last 20 years or so. I don't think it should be, that's not, I get the power, the money, the numbers, the schools, and all that. I just don't think that many teams should be given an automatic bye into a championship tournament, earn your way, and not say, well, you're the SEC, you get 4 schools, no matter what they've done in the last 20 years.
Yeah, but you're speaking to a crowd that doesn't understand anything that you're saying, because that's the whole point is they are the SEC, and so they deserve it based on the last 30 years and the 40 years. And it's the Big Ten, too. Let's not just paint them alone. It's the Big Ten as well. Biggest schools, biggest money stacks, and that's why biggest TV ratings. That's what all the signs they're going to point to are as the reasons as to why they deserve, because they will bring more eyeballs, they will bring more money, they will bring more fans, they will bring more of the top teams, and that's their argument.
But this is not a, I get it, but this is about who has the best football teams. And a lot of them have an advantage because of everything you mentioned.
Ideal world.
In an ideal world. But my God, this is about trying to find out who is the best football team, and most of those teams might end up winning it. This is not a money market or an investment account. It's a football game.
I think we're following 2 different sports, honestly, because it's absolutely about money. Yeah. All it's about is money.
Okay.
It
doesn't need to be everything that is decided is about money. I get what you're saying. It is. That doesn't mean I have to agree with it or accept it.
Right, you clearly don't, and that's fine, but I'm telling you, you're wanting this ideal world that doesn't exist, and that is not realistic. I'm sorry, I totally understand where you're coming from, but yeah, it'd be great if we could take a deep breath. It would be great if this happened or that happened, but I'm just dealing with reality, and the reality of the matter is that yeah, it'd be great if you just went off the actual results and all that, but you can't really do that when people are playing different leagues and different conferences, and it's all so subjective, because how do you prove this team's the 11th best versus this team's the 11th best if they haven't even played? It's very subjective. The whole thing's very subjective, so you're trying to eliminate some of that subjectivity, knowing that subjectivity more often than not plays into the hands of who? The same 2 conferences. And that's why when they're swinging their big stick out there, yeah, you hope that some people are fighting back. But this idea of we're just going to acknowledge and say, you know what, Tulane I do think is better than the 5th SEC team, even though they won't fill the stadium the same, or they won't bring the same amount of eyeballs. Yeah, ideally, that'd be great. Ideally, everybody would agree, you know what, Tulane is better than shoving a sixth Big Ten team in there. But those are not the people making the decisions most of the time. The TV execs and the playoff committee are, and I don't know that they always think that way. And so, yes, where you're coming from, I totally get and agree with. But after the last 2 years, I think to think that it's ever going to be just all clear-cut and it's going to be the most deserving and it's not going to be about the money is just following a completely different sport than the one that we're actually following, because it is a different way than that. And it's not going the opposite direction. It's going full force into what? Just yesterday, we've got a 12-team playoff, and what are we talking about? 14 and 16. So, and what's the argument about? Automatic qualifiers and how many from this league get to get in. So, yeah, I mean, it's very subjective, and there's no time to breathe because they're already on to the next thing. And that's just the way that it is. And so, yeah, I wish we all could take a deep breath, but obviously that's not going to happen. And to Paul's point about the automatic qualifiers, I think he's right about Sankey. Sankey doesn't want to be limited to 4 because what's he been pounding the table over? We'll leave if we don't get our way. We know why they're not leaving, because they don't have the infrastructure to leave.
Yeah. They
don't have everything set up to be able to leave right now. So maybe that's what they're working on. Maybe that's going to take them a couple years. Maybe that runs through this next contract of the college football playoff, and then the one after that where they do 14 or 16 or whatever it is they're going to decide to end up doing here. But, yeah, it's still a mystery as to what this is all going to look like in the long run, and I think we can all agree that the one thing we wish is that if you're going to do it, say you're going to do it, and just stop teasing that you're going to do it every time something doesn't go your way. If you're going to launch this thing in 6 years, just say it already. But the whole we're going to bark when we don't get our way is getting a bit tiresome, I think, for everybody. And then there might be some that say, well, all right, we'll see you out the door. We're still going to be fine with all the TV ratings we have. Maybe that's what we come to eventually, where you do run people off. But right now, everybody is included. I think that should be a thing that we focus on. And if a Big 12's getting a 2 automatic bid, I think it's pretty good in the long run. It's a lot better than the alternative that you thought you would probably have. But what I was speaking to more about, like the 3-3 or the 4-4, 2-2 automatic qualifiers, would be a 16 team, obviously, because you can't do that with just 12 teams. You couldn't have all 12 be from the 4 conferences. So, yeah, it would probably be more like a 3-3, 2-2, or however that would work. But in a 16 team, I think it would be more of a 4-4, 2-2, and then you'd have the rest of the at-large. Just trying to circle back to that. But, yeah, it's a political battle that's going to keep on waging when it comes to who deserves what, and there's 2 that are louder than everybody else.
All right, the NCAA men's tournament, which they're trying to screw that up. How many conferences get more than 1 automatic bid, automatic qualifier?
Probably about 8,
Automatic qualifier.
Oh, automatic. Everybody gets an automatic qualifier.
1.
Yeah, 1.
No conference gets more than 1 automatic qualifier. I understand it's a different sport, maybe different power structure. It's all about the money, the way the tournament is put together. Everybody gets units based on how many teams in a conference move through the tournament, and it's spread out over like an average of 6 years. I understand that right now SEC and the Big Ten have the brands. I understand they also are the ones who invented football. But at the same time, that doesn't mean they will in 5 years, even if the trend says that they are. Somebody brought up when I mentioned the Big 8 in the 80s. They weren't making $50 million a year. What does that have to do with anything? That if this was in the 80s, would the SEC have gotten 4 automatic qualifiers? Of course, back then, everything was subjective because you had polls that were voted on by the coaches and also the players. What the Big 8 did in the 80s or the 70s or the 90s, they were great, but they didn't get more than 1. So what difference does it make that now teams are making $50 and $60 million a year? I don't get that at all.
There were power brokers back then, too. I mean, like, the sport's never been about it's never been set up.
In 84, Brigham Young didn't have power brokers.
In 84, did they have NIL?
No, but like there's all these
different transfer portal.
Yeah, there's all these different things. But there's still Brigham Young though, but that was an exception to the rule, right? Like they were operating under the old system, but even still, like there were people moving the needle. Like look in the 80s, 6 out of the 8 teams in the Southwest Conference all got in trouble for breaking the rules. Well, why didn't one of them get in trouble? Because they were the informant, right? Like that was Texas. Like that was the power broker thing. So power brokering has always been going on in college athletics. It's just gotten worse and worse as, we as a fan base in a country have watched everything just get so unregulated and huge. And so you let things get that big, again, they're gonna move their power around. I think one of the things I thought about today when reading all this about how, if you're going to give somebody 4 and 2 and 2 or 3 and however it's going to be, that this is just essentially the first message to those G5s that we're going to let you be in this for a minute, but the second that we have an opening to shove you out the door, you're getting shoved out the door.
It sure seems that way. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much of an attraction for Liberty much longer. I think that you're going to want to have whatever works formula-wise or setup-wise that puts a Tennessee that's 4th or 5th in the SEC or Oregon who's 4th or 5th in the Big Ten in over the second G5, that's for sure, or and much less the top G5. Now, they'll still have a carved-out spot, but they're getting squeezed, to your point, Paul, for sure. But, I get it, but it's the reality of 2024. It's not 1984, and it'd be somewhat nicer in some ways if it was, and then again, some things are vastly improved. They pay players now. Players can make money. They can make really good money. They can transfer at will, basically, at this point. There's all sorts of things that are different. So, it was one way 30 years ago, but it's not 30 years ago. And there's a conference in particular that's won a bunch of national titles that's gotten awfully cozy with a certain network that's had propaganda rolling for about 2 decades now, and they've been able to not just have it be empty propaganda, but be, sitting there with a little bit of weight attached to it because they've gone out and they've done what you're supposed to do whenever you want to go a certain way. All you can really do is teams and universities is go out and win. And the SEC's done that more than anybody, and the Big Ten's done that pretty well itself, and they've got the biggest schools and the biggest money. So I'm sorry, guys, but this whole idea, and look, I champion the little schools as much as possible. There's plenty of them in the Big 12 that feel, if not all the Big 12 right now, that feel very nervous about the idea of getting squeezed out, even though I think there's maybe a couple, if not more than that, if the conferences just keep growing that would potentially have spots. But this isn't an ideal world we're working in anymore. It's what it is with transfers and NIL and TV contracts. And we just watched the Pac-12 die, guys. Were they okay in the 80s? The Southwest Conference was still alive. Texas is in the SEC now. So it's a totally different game, driven by totally different people with the same goals, which is to make money. But the problem is now they're having to share that money. So they need to make even more money beyond just the level of greed that schools already have and were able to feast off for decades. Now they want to continue to whet their appetite and get their bellies full. But the problem is they got to break off a good chunk of that now to go pay the players who are earning them that money. And so money is what it all revolves around. And I'm sorry, but getting that second G5 in there is not what TV execs are looking for. Yeah. They want Ohio State with its 4 losses in over the 1-loss Liberty team or the 0-loss Liberty team. And is that fair? No. But that's the reality of college football and the world right now, is that's what the eyes are on, is the money, the matchups, the TV deals. And it's not so much about making sure that team 175 or team 75 is getting the same shake as team number 4. And you know what? It's never really been fair across the board. A bunch of schools have always had inherent advantages, but it's just become much more of a gap now, which has been widely talked about. And it's unfortunate. You just hope that it doesn't result in, the one side of that gap falling off the cliff entirely at some point. But we don't know how that's all going to work out. So, yeah, here we are in the midst of more playoff chaos.
All right. Today, I mentioned Dan Wetzel, Pat Forty, and also Dellinger also had articles. They're the only ones, Dennis Dodd, among others, about how they aren't even at 12 yet, and they're already discussing 14 and 16, which is what we discussed yesterday and today. I thought this was the best one of the night from A. David Hale Joint. What college football should do, keep expanding the SEC and Big Ten until they get and include 134 teams. Then separate them into divisions based on geography. Expand the playoffs to 134, scrap the regular season, have them play 12 playoff games each, and then we'll use computers to select the 2. The number 134, I think, is the number of FBS teams. I think that might be 131, 134.
No, it's 134
but then
now.
Split them up geographically.
No, it's 134 because welcome aboard, Kennesaw State.
Yeah.
There
you go.
That's the thing. Think about when we talk about little guys. Kennesaw State has obviously made all these moves to get to the FBS level. They've done everything they're supposed to do, and they get to say they're having dinners and all these things and saying, guys, we're in the FBS. We finally made it. And then you just pick up or open the phone or the computer or the newspaper, if you still get one of those every day, and read college football news, and the headline might be, F you, Kennesaw State.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
or they don't answer.
Yeah.
Or they don't answer the phone. They don't answer the phone. There's another one here from Nick Saban. We're not going to use all of these quotes from Nick Saban. Spoke again yesterday to ESPN. This is from a Chris Lowe article. Here are some quotes from the greatest of all time. I even saw Lane Kiffin tweeted out earlier today, hey, this is hot. This is from the GOAT. He can now talk about this. Thank you. Do this. What we have now is not college football. Not college football as we know it. You hear somebody use the word student athlete. That doesn't exist. Listen, I'm for the players. It's not that I'm not for the players. I want to see the players have great quality of life and be able to create value for themselves. But we've gone to nobody talking about education, nobody talking about creating value for the future, to talking about how much money can be made while I'm at or in a college. I think consequences of this could come down, and nobody cares about this. Nick Saban brings it up, and I think some do. I guess so. I couldn't say, I don't need to say nobody. When some of these guys are 28, 29 years old, maybe they didn't prepare themselves for when they can't play football anymore, which is what you should do when you go to college. Now, some completely disagree with that. No, you go to college because it's a professional and you get paid. But what you have now isn't name, image, and likeness. A collective has nothing to do with name, image, and likeness. People can give money to the university again, get a tax deduction for doing it, and the university in some kind of way shares, whether it's share revenue, whether it's buying marketing rights, which is a possibility. So we don't need, there's two or three more of that, but there's Saban, and again, he can say it now, probably because if he said it when he was coaching, well, yeah, you just don't want to give money to the players, but Alabama obviously found ways to do that, even maybe before NIL. So he's speaking out. Do you think that Greg Sankey's listening? Is ESPN listening? Is Fox listening? Do they care?
I think the bigger people that need to listen that he's really speaking out to is the NCAA. And let's build a system that works, because he's right. Name, image, and likeness, while it's about that, collectives aren't necessarily about that. Now, we've had NIL agents on this show and people who that's very much what they do. Like, their job is, I like the guy we had that had Dylan Gabriel. My job is to get Dylan Gabriel not money for being at Oklahoma. My job is to get Dylan Gabriel money for being Dylan Gabriel. So Dylan Gabriel can endorse this place or that place or wherever he is. And Dylan Gabriel had to, back out of some contracts because no longer was he valuable to Big Red Motors anymore, because he's now an Oregon Duck, but he can get those same opportunities there. But what the larger part of collectives are about is paying players, not for the name, image, and likeness, just paying them to be there, which that should not be the responsibility of an NIL collective. If we're going to pay athletes and they're going to have a salary, that should be the responsibility of the university. And finding a way to do that makes a whole lot more sense than, let's make sure that all these people outside the university who are only tangentially connected to it pay for it.
NIL had a fun example, had many of them early on. Jared Casey catching the winning pass against Texas for a bad KU team, pre-Lance Leipold, to beat Texas, right? That was a fun moment. Then he got the Applebee's contract.
Right.
That was NIL. That's the way NIL was supposed to be. Next thing you know, a Tennessee quarterback recruit is reportedly getting $7 million, and he hasn't even stepped on campus. That's what it turned into. Went from on the field, made a play, here's this guy, local Applebee's, wants to highlight him. That's NIL in its intent. And then it became pay for play pretty much right away. And so, that's been an issue. I don't know how you didn't think that was going to be an issue, but when you have states with different laws and you have no overarching legislation, that's what's going to happen. Because you're going to have this school out in Florida that wants to bend the rules as much as they possibly can to get their team as loaded as they possibly can. NIL original basis be damned. The rules say I can, so it's not technically illegal. And you know how people are, especially people that want to win and want to benefit off that winning. And so they're going to push the envelope. And so we've seen that pushed in various corners to about as far as it can go at this point. And so without some type of overarching legislation, which I know makes people's eyes roll, and I'd get tired of talking about it as well. But truly without that, you can't establish the ideal world where everything's the same. Oh, wait, you can. How could you possibly do that? Oh, that's right. You negotiate with the players and you sign them to contracts. Oh, wait, you don't want to do that? Well, then you're SOL, buddy, because there's no other way to corral that.
Which is what Jay Billis brought up in that quote yesterday.
So you want to fix it, go fix it, but you don't want to fix it truly because the fix is not the fix that you want. So I'm getting about sick and tired of hearing about how it's not the way it's supposed to be. While I agree with that, and I do wish it was more of the way it was supposed to be, you people who want to change it and who truly want to do it for the benefit of the game can't get together to go and do what would be the game changer. And I understand why. There's a fear of what that would create, not just for themselves, but for everybody else. And then you talk about teams falling off of a cliff. Well, if it all of a sudden became collective bargaining, Kennesaw State's kind of screwed, because they're not going to be able to sign their entire football team, most likely to contracts. Now, maybe they could swing it. Maybe I'm overplaying that, and maybe everybody would be fine in the long run. But I understand there's a hesitancy there because of the commitment that would take and the more money sharing that would take. But if you want to stop it, that's the solution that's slapping everybody right in the face. But there are obviously variables that don't want everybody to, that don't allow everybody to agree that that's the move that we all need to make at this point in time. But hey, go to Capitol Hill, Nick Saban. Love it. Go out there and throw your weight around. I love that he can talk about this more openly now, or at least feels that he can talk about this more openly now. I think a voice like his will be beneficial as he is a part of game day and it can just do interviews and isn't so busy with running Alabama football. But yeah, I mean, if you don't want to capitulate to having to give away some of that TV money or whatever other revenue sharing or giving everybody the benefits that an employee would get, well, then you can't turn around and then complain about NIL being out of control and how you can't wrangle it because you're refusing to do the one thing that would allow you to do that. But again, there's reasons as to why it's a bit more complicated and not just black and white.
In the story, and we'll wrap it up with one more quote from Saban. Saban said he's not nearly as well-versed on the legality of everything as people like SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, Alabama AD Greg Byrne. Garrett, go to the one that says, just like an NFL player. Just like an NFL player has a contract or a coach has a contract, something in place so you don't have all this rating of the rosters and mass movement. And by the way, he did that, had it happen to him, and also did it as head coach at Alabama the last few years. I wonder what fans, Craig, you brought this up, I wonder what fans are going to say when they don't even know the team from year to year because there's no development of teams, just bringing in new players every year. It's one thing to come up with a solution. It's another thing to implement it. I'm here to help, is what he said.
I use the comparison of college basketball where I thought college basketball was really hurt by the one and done rule for a while. I mean, like now I get it's fine and because NIL has kind of helped that. But one of the reasons that UNLV, Duke, and Michigan had this great, remember in the 90s when, between those three, there was always, they'd play each other in the regular season. UNLV couldn't really Michigan couldn't get past Duke, and, UNLV's in there, just doing crazy things out in the desert with Tarkanian and all those things. Those got good over the years because Christian Laettner was playing Chris Webber every year. We have a documentary where you see a guy saying, I thought Grant Hill was a bitch. And that animosity built up over years. That kind of stuff didn't exist for a long time in college basketball. Now, if you look at what's going on in the Big 12, even with the transfer portal, you've got teams, veteran guys that play each other for years. They're in college basketball. You know them before they go off and play where they're going to play. In college football, if you're just going year to year with like we have a different quarterback every year and this guy is in his third or fourth team, I mean, how do you fall in love with that guy? How do you fall in love with those teams? But if they don't, then are you going to look back and go, man, that 10-2 season was really great. Who was on it? Oh man,
yeah.
Like it's just those are the things you miss.
Do we think is there a chance that it's about winning the championship? And we even have said this about Kennesaw State or for Boise State or whoever. About a chance to win the national title. Has winning the national title consumed us so much that we are now not enjoying college football in general?
Yes, because Kennesaw State has absolutely 0% chance of ever sniffing a national title.
Yeah.
And so do most of the teams. So, yeah, it's unrealistic. It's the whole idea, though, that you have a chance. If you got that special roster together with the right head coach at the right time and you win those close games and all of a sudden you find yourself there with at least a shot, there's that hope every year that you have. And now you can have that undefeated team and not even make the dadgum playoff. So that's where we find ourselves now. So now you need to expand the playoff to ensure that things like that don't happen. But is that why you're expanding it? Because Florida State got screwed? Or are you expanding it because you're going to make more money? Well, the reason you're doing it is because you're doing it for more money. Back to the start of this show. And why can't things be smooth? Because of money. Because of money. That's the answer to go back to every single time. But yes, there was at one point in time a hope that with the right guy, Matt Rule at Baylor, had he elected to have stuck around longer than he did, and the way rules were set then, could he have built this thing into a Big 12 champion? Absolutely, because Dave Aranda won 2 years after, and Rule played for it in his last year. So they were knocking on the door already. Could they have found themselves in the playoff? Absolutely. They were just on the outside looking in during that same time frame. And so you had that hope. But then guess what happened? NIL happened and transfer portal happened. And so now you would think a guy like that would probably still have the support to keep most of his roster together. But what are the odds that, well, Michigan could use a guy at safety. Hey, Jalen Petrie. He could use a linebacker over at Alabama. What's up, Terrell Bernard? And so now you're having to deal with all these other factors that don't make it all that realistic that a Baylor or most 90% of the teams out there are going to have the right coach at the right time with the right roster, with the right NIL and the right timing of it all to keep it all together for 3 or 4 years to get to that point where it all pays off and it peaks at the right time. That's just not the world we're living in anymore. Yeah. You can't keep those teams together. So I think that, yeah, everybody's got to kind of change their expectations because let me tell you right now, I've been saying this going back the last couple of summers when we've been talking about this expanded playoff. But the hopes for national championships for a lot of teams are getting crushed with this bigger playoff because you are not equipped as a TCU to win the 14 playoff. Or, okay, let's say you are equipped to get to the final of it. You ran into Georgia. Maybe in a different year you pull Oregon and you can beat them. But you could prove you could at least get there. But now let's add a couple more games.
Yeah.
And now let's add that, okay, you're hosting first round against SMU, and then the next round you're playing Tennessee, and then the next round now you're playing Michigan, and then in the next round you're going to play Georgia. Like, are they going to be able to do? Are 95% of teams going to be able to go through that juggernaut of a tournament? The answer is no, in my mind. So yeah, everybody who's not about 15 or 20 teams can't, I don't think, or has to completely rid themselves of any idea that they could ever possibly compete for it. I think you just need to focus on getting yourself into the tournament as much as anything else now, and then hoping that you hit the right spot at the right time with the right team. But everybody thinking that they have a shot at a national title, no, that's just not true, and that's simply not reality. And everybody who's still thinking that way, I'm sorry to burst the bubbles, but I think that's pretty obvious with the way things are going right now.
Thank you very much. A lot of people agree with everything that's being said. Not everything, but preseason champions Ohio. 42 teams have won a national championship in the history of national championships being decided. This is interesting from the same guy, maybe a woman. Baylor has won 0 national championships in 155 years of college football. Why worry about it now? Well, then why have a team? Why have a team? You don't think that right now in Lubbock they're trying to build some momentum because they feel like they could win? Well, they need to win a conference title because that's been forever. But isn't that why you, like high school kids, when they go to work out in August, it's the hope of winning? I used to go to 25 to 50 schools every August. We're going to win a state championship, knowing that 85% of them didn't have a chance, but they could at least dream. Why are they worried about it now? They spent $300 million on a football stadium.
Yeah, and the other thing
they spent $6 million on a football coach and maybe more.
Right.
They're building a brand new football ops building that's millions of dollars. That's why, because maybe by doing that, they can recruit better, have better chances, although really their chances are very numb. But they've been close in the last 15 years, three times.
Nobody ever built a light bulb until somebody did either.
Look, I've never been a millionaire, but I'm not going to stop trying to be a millionaire.
No, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, yes, you can't let it define you. Like, you can't let not winning the national championship be your only goal as an athletic department, because only one team gets to do that in every sport in your division every year. But Baylor and TCU in particular have been very close to it.
Been knocking on that door pretty hard a few times.
They've knocked on the door. Look, Art Briles had them knocking on the door in 2014, and if not for a really ass-backward strategy from Bob Bowlesby, one of those two teams gets in. If they had thought it out, one of those two teams probably gets in. They weren't not in because they weren't good, or because they weren't deserving. They were not in because they're like, oh, we're going to take 4. We need a reason to leave somebody out in this Power 5. Well, thank you, Big 12, for writing it up for us. Yeah. We don't even have to think about it.
I mean, they have knocked on the door at various times, been close, but not in the game.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you stop trying to get there. I think it's like anything else in life. And even if it seems unrealistic, I want to be the president of the United States one day. Well, if you're like 35, it's like, I'm not president, I just give up that dream. I mean, or like I said with the millionaire thing, and I know there's probably better examples, but you still strive to be the best. Now, it just can't be the end-all, be-all. It can't be if we don't get to a national championship or don't win a national championship or don't sniff a national championship, then it's all for naught. I mean, that's the thing, is I think you've just got to realize what your true goals are, which is graduating kids, setting them up for life after football, paying them as well as you possibly can and treating them as well as you possibly can during their time, getting them to grow, getting your staff to grow, getting the adults in the room to grow, and being better along the way as best you can, and to win conference titles and beat your rivals and do all those things. There's plenty of things you can still do, but you're still always hoping to be the best. Everybody does that. Everybody, even if they're not a great athlete early on, you still maybe have that dream of being the NBA. And I think now, though, there's a realization coming into play of it's just going to take something different, because as much as you had the 2014 team, I guess that was the 5th team out of the 4 teams in the playoff, or no, that was
they were
okay.
It was 14.
Then you had the Matt Rule team that was the 5th team out of the 4 teams, I think, or it was right there on the precipice of that. The problem now is that as close as they got, the rules are different. Like I pointed out earlier, they're not only different from 1984, which you were speaking of, they're different from 2014. They didn't have NIL. They didn't have, so the rosters have tilted so much in favor of the bigger schools who already had the benefits, that the idea of them being able to knock on the door nearly as much, or much less knock on more than a door or two, is just, it's a little bit more unrealistic than it was before. And I think that's where people are just having to try to still come to grips with what all this is going to look like and adjust their expectations along the way. You can't just expect people whose entire time they've been growing up watching college football, hoping their team wins a national title one day, to just overnight just go, oh, well, I'm just going to stop thinking about that. It's going to take some time for people to probably realize that that's a bit more unrealistic than it ever was before for most everybody that's not a top 15 team. And
why do you wake up every day? We wake up every day just to be normal. Some people do. Some of you hope wake up every day to go win the day, go be better in life and what you do for a living. Just because you've never done it doesn't mean you should stop trying. And I'm not going to get philosophical here, but you're right, Craig. 2021, Baylor finished 5th in the country. Had there been a 12-team playoff, they get to be a part of that. They might even have hosted a game at home. Who knows? Maybe who else they play. There have been teams in the conference itself, the Big 12. Oklahoma many times knocked on the door, could not knock it in after 2000. Texas did in 05, didn't in 08 or 09. Oklahoma State, early on in the 2010s, I forgot what year, they were on the edge of that. And in fact, when they Big 12 championship, had they beaten Baylor, they might have been a part of it.
Yeah.
And we're talking about this.
No, I know. And look, I've seen some people in the chat getting mad because we might have left their team out. Was not intentional. I was just pointing out the CFP.
Everybody's mad.
Yeah. Listen. Yeah. I get it. Wet blanket, you're mad because we didn't say a good thing about Oklahoma State when we didn't mean not to.
That's never
That's
happened.
your whole deal. That's your personality altogether. I mean, it is like people are on the knocking on the door, and then through almost no fault of their own. Like, yeah, you've lost a game when you shouldn't have lost a game. All right, that's fine. The Big 12 doesn't get the mulligan that the SEC does or Alabama does. We get that, but arbitrary reasons have kept you out. Arbitrary reasons, not like, well, shouldn't have lost 2 games. Like, well, only lost 1, and then beat the team their loss, and then you get into the weeds of that. Like, that's what it is. It's not that.
Well, let me say this: Oklahoma State, for example, may not win a national title. Or now I'm probably not talking. Now I'm saying they can't win a national title. That's going to go the other way again. No, Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU, every other team that I'm not mentioning here because there's 100 of them that may not be in the mix to win a 12-team playoff, to the original question about, well, if it's not realistic, why even bother? Because there's a lot of money in making the playoff. There's a lot of cachet in hosting a playoff game, and those things are still worthwhile to strive for. And if you get to those points, and then who knows, maybe you win that game, and then boom, next thing you know, you're playing in an Orange Bowl, and you're part of the Final 8 or Final 4, whatever that's going to be. That can still be a great season. Great seasons don't and never have revolved around national championship or bust. I think maybe that's gotten into too many people's minds, but you can still have great seasons like Baylor just 2-3 years ago went 12-2, won a Sugar Bowl. That's the best season in their history. It doesn't have to end in a national title, but again, the hope has always just been there at the beginning of seasons that you have that chance. And if you want to rip that away and just peel it all back and say you don't have a chance, that's fine. But that's what college football has always revolved around, is even if it's not that realistic, and it's even more unrealistic now, but those teams at least feeling across the board like they have all the same opportunities and all they have to do is go out there and win their games. And that's just no longer the case. And it's going to take people some time, I think, to adjust their expectations and to adjust to what the new realities of success are going to be. That's all. And that's not a point the finger at you're wrong or nobody's wrong. We're all just trying to digest this the same and come to the same realization of what was cool in 1984 and deemed successful, or in 1994 or 04 or 14 is not going to be the case in 24 or in 34. And so we're all just adjusting to that. And we have different thoughts on it. We're not going to always agree. But that opportunity that you had a chance, even if you really didn't, that's not even seemingly there for most schools now, and that's pretty obvious.
I think what everybody wants, even those who might be agreeing or disagreeing with any of the comments or opinions amongst each other or us, is we love football. We love college football. The innocence of the game, is it still there? There are some great stories out there, but it does seem to be such, and I even heard Sarkisian say this, he's obsessed with winning the national championship. That's not easy to do. He might win 3. I don't know. But that seems to be where we are. The money, the national championship, and everything else in between. You disagree? Everything else in between is like we forget the journey to get to that point. I want September, October, November, and December to be fun and enjoy it. And I don't know if we just fast forward to January 20th of 2025. All right, we've pretty much blown out the first hour. Thanks for a lot of the feedback. We're not done with that. I want to get to the EA Sports stuff before we take a break, and then we'll have Max Olson to discuss a lot of this, the Athletic.com national columnist today at 4 o'clock. Oh, one thing with the NCAA today. Photo shoots, not the only thing going away from the recruiting visits. NCAA put out an email this morning. Schools can no longer decorate a hotel room for prospects on their official visits. All cookie cakes, snacks must be handed to the recruits in the lobby, inching closer to NFL in their top 30 visits. And, oh, by the way, the NCAA blasted out this email. You know why? Schools wanted this to be changed. Because you know what happened? These official visits became so elaborate, so much money being spent, that the schools were having to get, let's say Garrett was going to visit Alabama. That's hell, the LSU fan.
No bad.
They had to not get him one night of a hotel room or who else coming with him. They had to do 2. And then if you have 40 guys coming in or 22 guys, so they were having to double up the extra night of a hotel room so they could decorate the damn thing the night before.
I mean, this is where it's gone crazy. If if a recruit goes to a place because the hotel room was decorated nicely, he sucks. I'm going to tell you, that guy sucks. You don't want him on your team. If you say, well, why'd you pick Ohio State? Like, oh, man, the hotel room had cookies in it, and they put all these streamers and pictures, and they had a signed photo of Marvin Harrison Jr. It was awesome.
They had Doritos?
And you're like, yeah, and you're like, nah, you suck. That's If you care about that, you suck.
All right, so there we are with that. EA Sports sending out NIL contracts to athletes today, according to Matt Brown and others, to have their NIL appear in EA Sports College Football 25, believed to be among the largest, if not the largest NIL deal ever. And then right on top of that, Rob Cassidy, I laughed my butt off. As a person that was once in charge of getting college athletes to fill out paperwork, thoughts and prayers to whoever's in charge of this endeavor, although they're going to get paid. He was saying this because he would have players fill out forms to go to the athletic department or the football facility or wherever the equipment was and get $1,000 worth of swag. And even then, a lot of them never did.
Yeah, this one they might, just because they know it. It makes sense to them, maybe a little bit more. So,
yeah, I mean, I really don't care about the hotel visit, cookie cake stuff. I mean, that's always been a fun thing, and that's a very much like an in-the-weeds type of thing as college football recruiting fans. But, I mean, the absence of that's not going to change my life. It's going to be a bummer, I guess, for recruits coming up, but I really don't think that that's that big of a deal in the long run, and I can, I guess, understand the reasoning behind that. But I don't know. I start to tune out when I hear that's like the money commitment. It's just like the extra night in the hotel room was suddenly too much for your athletic department budget. I just think it's probably more of the hassle than anything, and it got a bit too elaborate. Sure, I mean, you started to see it to a point where I saw. One video is just like, I mean, that's more than I got at Christmas. It's like, it's insane the amount of the whole floor, whole room's covered in just stuff. And so I can see where that got a little bit out of control, but does that change the game in any real way? Absolutely not. I did, I don't know what the right word is. I found that, I don't know if it was is negative or what. I kind of double glanced at it when I saw people with the NCAA money payout comments, and it was like a sports lawyer of like, well, get ready for the Caleb Williams of next year to hold out because he's getting the same. And it's just like, dear God, like that's when the whole money conversation, like it gets into such a greed and just, I don't know what other words to describe it as, just a weird place for me that
Garrett, you have that tweet from Heitner.
Like, I'm just not that money obsessed. Yeah, I think this is the exact one. It's just like, okay, okay, like, but I don't care. Like, I don't care about how much money.
Are you going to buy EA Sports if Caleb Williams was not in it?
Absolutely, I'm going to, because you can create Caleb Williams in the game.
Yes, exactly right.
And then the next person that I saw was like, whoa, wait till that feature gets taken out. Okay, then guess what? Caleb Williams was here and boom, gone like that in a blink of an eye anyways. I'm already on my dynasty to 2027. He's not even involved in I mean, like,
the players I'm recruiting have fake generated names anyway.
I hate to tell you this, but they don't really matter all that much in the game. Like, I mean, truly, like having the exact name, image, likeness to them is not that big of a deal that can't be, gone around. So I just found like the fact that here's this guy, and with all due respect, but your first thoughts, like, and I guess that's the lawyer perspective maybe, is just more of the greed of like, well, this guy needs more money because he's a bigger star. And like, that can also be quite subjective. So it's like, you can't even just have a video game come back now before it starts delving into the money part of it. And I just think that's gross. And maybe I'm in the wrong place because I just got done talking about how money just rules it all and all of that. I can deal with that when it comes to understanding the playoff structure and understanding the TV networks. And I get that greed. But like, can we just stave off the money thing for like a half a second when it comes to just enjoying something? Or do we immediately have to look at this from a business perspective and then ruin that idea too?
Well, that's what the 12 and 14 and 16 teams is about. You're right. Here's another one like what you were saying from Dennis Dodd. Reading the EA Sports release, there are no royalties for players. That might be one of the largest group licensing deals without royalties for the athletes. Can't think of anyone that is bigger. So there's another one like, well, wait a minute. Should they also not get royalties based on?
Yeah, but how do you determine the royalties?
For 1,000 players.
Yeah, so like the way that royalties normally work, like if you get a royalty check from, like, say you were a cast member on Family Ties, you get a royalty check because Family Ties was picked up by, like, I don't know, it's a little different thing. It's tough.
But it's about money.
Hey, again, let's get to step one first.
Yeah.
See how much money it makes.
Can the game be released?
Yeah, like, let's get to step one. They're getting him paid where they weren't before. And, really only one player had a beef with all that, and it was just the dude on the cover, because everybody else, I mean, yes, you could do the jersey numbers the same way, but again, that could be anything, and you could buy, like, somebody would send you a flash drive and you'd put it in, and now you can just download it. So again, all this stuff people are fighting out. There's internet nerds right now building a roster file for it just in case things change. Yeah. There's a guy right now who's decided, I'm never going to see a woman naked, so I'm going to do this. And that's what his life is.
I'm going to go back, and mine's going to be Gary Beeben from 1967,
there
UCLA.
you go.
Kim Coulter, after today, y'all are going to need a blood pressure medication as a sponsor. I just went online to HEB and ordered some Valium. It's all about what we're here for. It's college football, and it's about wanting and loving and needing and disagreeing and agreeing and whatever else that we do on an everyday basis. When we come back, Max Olson, his thoughts about all of what we just discussed. Garrett Ross runs the mothership. Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. Thank those of you who have been in the chat so far, and also even had a couple of text messages at 254-339-1122. Paul, Craig, and I'm David, and this is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas. You can go online, stonewood-dental.com, for more information. There's a note from Dr. Childress, who's my dentist, and they have more than Dr. Childress. They have a nice group of dentists, all of them experienced professionals in various ways. They want to be not like a oil change where your car goes in and they do this and that, check everything. They want to specialize in fillings, crowns, sealants, periodontal therapy, also root canals, IV sedation, extractions, fluoride, implants, bridges, dentures, partials, treatment of TMG, full mouth restoration, and in some cases, I've had some of that. I have. In fact, I've had about half of that, as I've tried to get my dental work back where it needs to be, where I let it get a little bit out of whack for too many years. Dr. Steve Childress gave me a game plan. It has worked. I appreciate him. Doesn't mean it's over, because you always have to work on that. Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, my dentist in Robinson, Texas.
Attention all car enthusiasts. Get ready for the President's Day sale happening at Allen Samuels in Waco. For a limited time only, drive home in a car of your dreams with unbelievable discounts. Looking for luxury? How about the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Summit with a whopping $12,500 off MSRP? Or maybe the adventurous spirit of the 2023 Jeep Compass and Renegades, now 10% below MSRP. But wait, there's more. Save big on the rugged 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport, with savings of $13,000 and an incredible 15% off MSRP on every 2023 Gladiator. Rev up your engines with the 2023 Dodge Charger RT, now $8,000 off MSRP. And a special thank you to our first responders. Enjoy a $500 off your purchase. Hurry in now and take advantage of these unbelievable deals. This inventory won't last long. Visit Allen Samuels in Waco. Come by. Let's be friends.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient, with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6, and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Max Olson, theathletic.com, joins us on 365 Sports, and he's here with us today. All right, Max, the college football playoff is going to be 12, but it might as well go ahead and just go straight to 16. Don't pass go. The EA Sports release is coming out. Players are getting that, and that's a big deal. Your thoughts about rushing to 14 or 16 before we even figure out if 12 is going to work?
Yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I always kind of felt like the 12-team model was a pretty elegant solution for the variety of maybe not problems, but the variety of kind of things that the 14 pose that you feel like there's room to make improvement. I think the adjustment to a 5+7 makes sense with the dissolution of the Pac-12. And guys, I think it doesn't make a ton of sense to me to try to change the plan for 2 years down the road here when we've never played a 12 team and never seen all the benefits of having these first round home games and things like that. I think it's very nakedly like, a lot of people worrying that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to ask for more than just one automatic bid. And I think they're going to have to get this thing figured out here in the next month. 14 to me seems dilutive. It doesn't really seem that additive to 12. But I think the real question here is, are there going to be concessions so that the SEC and the Big Ten can guarantee that they have more teams in this playoff as they continue to expand and add premium programs?
Max, I would assume that none of the other conferences want those two to have 4 each. And I don't think that the SEC really wants automatic qualifiers because I think Greg Sankey believes that there are years that he can get more than 4 teams. And if you give him a minimum, that's also going to be probably his maximum because you now have others that have to have minimums as well. What do you think that ultimately winds up at? Because I wouldn't say it would be 4, but do you think that they would say, you can have 3 and we'll take 2 in the other power conferences and Group 5, you're still lucky to be here?
I think that the suspicion for years now has been like, if you ask Greg Sankey what he'd prefer, I'm guessing he would prefer a model where it's just all at large, where it's the top 12 teams in the rankings, and don't limit good teams from making the field. And if you took that approach, then more often than not, that's going to favor the SEC and the Big Ten, especially as we all know, committee members are going to give a ton of respect to the difficulty of the schedules in those 2 leagues going forward. But, because we've set up a system here where they want to still reward conference championships and make those matter, which is good. That's where you kind of have this, that's where the rub is. I mean, I think that, the fact that the SEC and the Big Ten are now in collaboration with each other is not a good thing for everybody else when it comes to these kinds of discussions. And so, yeah, it could be something extreme like asking for 4 in the hopes to settle in for 3 or something like that. And the question is kind of who's going to give ground on that. You could have the 4 Power 5 leagues say, we want more than one guaranteed bid. I mean, I think it's very interesting to see where those discussions continue. And clearly, when it comes to the agreement with ESPN, I think it's obvious that they need to really get this resolved here in the next few weeks.
Max, the video game is back. We've known that for a few months that it was on its way back, but now we're getting the official announcements. We've got all the schools today that are putting out the graphics and announcing that they're in the game, and we're getting more details along the way about the modes and just who all's involved and all of those types of things. All 134 programs confirmed today from the FBS will be in there. Just what's your excitement level? I know you have an interest in this, of course, and a lot of us do, but what is your excitement level, and what do you, I guess, think about what you've heard so far when it comes to the game?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the 14-team playoff fight out there is important, but guys, this is literally the only thing I want to talk about.
There you go.
The video game. I mean, I've been, I've loved the EA college football game forever. I was one of those guys who would go through and plug in the first and last name of players when they were just listed with their jersey numbers and stuff, because I love the rosters and all that kind of stuff. So, still been playing that. The last game that they put out, the 2014 game, been playing that ever since. So, couldn't be more excited for this game to come out this summer. And I think it's very exciting the way they've gone about this. I think it's a good thing they took the extra year to put it together. And yeah, to see, I mean, just in the last half hour here, to see guys like Quinn Ewers and Jalen Milroe and Quinshon Judkins come out and say, that they're going to be in the game. I think if you're a fan of any of these teams, that's got to be pretty thrilling. And if you love doing the dynasty mode and trying to build a program, stuff like that, the fact you're going to have real names and you're going to have 85-man rosters, just going to give a lot of realism to it. And I'm sure the anticipation is going to be crazy for it this summer when it does come, and expectations will be super, super high. But man, it's going to be great to have it back in our lives. And I think just what a cool thing for college football players. I know there's like some, this was a story a few months ago about like, oh man, is $500, $600 not going to be enough to pay these guys for their likeness? But the deal they struck in terms of giving them $600, giving them a copy of the game, I think that's a pretty sweet deal for all these scholarship players out there. So hope that they opt in, and can't wait to see the game when it finally comes out.
Yeah, Max, I said this during the commercial break because I think it was Darren Heitner who brought up how long until Quinn Ewers, for example, or someone of that profile has an issue that he's making the same $600 that the third string guard at Penn State is making. It's like, well, I understand that there's that part, but Max, they're in a freaking video game. It's not like they're not getting anything out of this. They're in a video game. So it's like
they're in a video game, and this is a generation of kids that hasn't had the NCAA video game for the past decade, and has grown up playing Madden and playing 2K and playing FIFA. So it's a big deal to them to finally get to be in the game. And I think, believe me, I've been talking to college football players about this game for a long time. And I think you talk to most of them, they would have said, man, if you send me a copy of the game, that's all I want. So, I mean, to throw $600 on top, I think is, I'd be interested to see, there's probably going to be some agents like him pushing guys to say, hey, hold out for more. And, I think that's probably going to be pretty unpopular with people, even if it makes sense in terms of the, you can understand the economics of it, obviously. But no, I'm with you. I think these guys want to be in the game, bottom line. And I'm glad that at a time when there's not collective bargaining and stuff, that they can figure out a group licensing plan for this that works.
I think it's going to be $600 per year while you're on a team. I think that might change the flow to the NFL. That $600 to be a part of a video game. That's from something, by the way, RX on the chat room. Thanks for bringing that up.
Also, Max, I've seen tweets from Open Doors today from athletes like Denzel Burke that he's, signed an NIL deal with them as well. So those are available as well. So there's lots out there. Yeah. So there are.
Ewers, Judkins, also Milrow, and a young man from Michigan as well. That's a part of that group that I just sent to Garrett. That's what Max said. In fact, that's your tweet of the players saying.
I think that I think they've done a good job today in terms of rolling out this stuff, and obviously getting 11,000 kids to opt into something is probably going to take a little bit of time here. But no, I think I would expect that you're going to see the majority of players wanting to be in this game and wanting to collect an easy $600 for doing nothing.
Max, how with all the things that have changed in this TV deal that's not negotiated yet, they say that they need to get it done in a month. Do you see that happening, that they actually could get this done in a month, and then we see the 12-team playoff is just the stretch run?
You know, in terms of figuring out this 14, 12, 16 situation, that I can't speak on in terms of what kind of timetable it takes to get on the same page about that. But I think that it's clear, and there's reporting this week in The Athletic from Andrew Marchand and my colleagues about, look, ESPN is clearly tied to this for the long term. But I think if you're on their side of things, you're like, hey guys, get your act together here, get this figured out, because I'm sure that they, these next 2 years we'll get to have this 12-year run. But if you're going to try to lock in a very long-term TV contract on this that involves billions a year, then I think you're going to need some real clarity on this. And it's been, obviously you guys have talked about it plenty, but I mean, from the day the 12-team model dropped, it's obviously been kind of a frustrating process with a lot of delays and a lot of confusion over like, hey, why isn't this figured out yet? So seemed like the meetings this week were productive, and it's clear that they need to get some real clarity on this here by the end of the month.
Max, Kalen DeBoer's staff at Alabama is finalized. It was a little bit of a roller coaster there at various turns. It took a little while longer than maybe folks hoped for, but it's done now. I was curious your thoughts on what you see, and also I can't imagine Dave Aranda is the biggest Kalen DeBoer fan, because he finally finalizes his staff, and then he's lost 3 assistant coaches, including 2 to Alabama in the last 3 days. So on the one hand, thoughts on Alabama, and on the other hand, just what do you think for Dave Aranda and just the bad luck, I guess, that he has right now when it comes to just getting his staff finalized?
Yeah, I mean, those 2 hires, certainly a little bit of bad luck there for Baylor, just with the fact that that Scott Huff, the offensive line coach from Washington, was going to go to Alabama, ends up going with Ryan Grubb to the Seattle Seahawks, so that creates that opening. Same thing with, they thought it seemed like a Washington assistant was going to go take that linebacker's job at Alabama. He ends up going to Tennessee instead, and so that creates those openings, and that cost Baylor. And guys, I was looking at it too. I mean, I think if you're in Dave Aranda's spot, and look, congrats to Dennis Johnson too. Obviously, that opportunity with the Ravens is super impressive. But man, if it were me, I'd probably be like, and I know they've already filled the line, but like I'd probably be like, hey, we need to push Springwell back a little bit here. Like that was not the plan. You know what I mean? So yeah, pretty surprising to see that hit. A month out from spring practice and starting. But, I think the Kalen DeBoer staff is super interesting. And usually, especially when you have a staff that just played in a national championship game, you would think Kalen DeBoer is bringing everybody with him to Tuscaloosa. And that's ultimately not going to be the case here. He's brought Nick Sheridan, promoted him to offensive coordinator to replace Grubb. He brought Jamarcus Shepard, who did an excellent job, obviously, with Washington's wide receivers. But the rest of the staff, he's kind of put together from scratch here a little bit. And, I think Kane Womack coming as DC from South Alabama, his head coaching post, is impressive. And I think they've got some pretty good hires for the staff. But it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this group gels together in such a high-profile spot here when they haven't, maybe not all these guys have worked together before. And, certainly can you go compete with Georgia and everybody you got to compete with in recruiting in the SEC? Very interested to see Kalen DeBoer get it right in terms of constructing a staff with a lot of new faces.
Here is another thing about EA Sports. So it was announced the broadcasters have been selected to be a part of it. Paul, look who's on the cover and the helmet behind Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's not going to be it, but I'm fine. Look, I'm fine. I'm not mad at him anymore. He did what he was told to do by the corporate overlords.
It's a picture of a Florida State helmet, Max. But we'll get to the other one, Garrett, in just a moment. Max, on the Dave Aranda losing coaches, obviously he had a pretty damn good staff. 1 to the NFL, 2 to Alabama. How much do you think, if he was even more on solid ground, no matter what is said about him being on solid ground, we know what's going on, how much do you think that came into play, if at all?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think that all three of those guys, I'm sure, got pretty healthy raises to make those moves. But, let's be honest. Like, I think that, the timing's not great for this. And you might think, like, okay, let's just go internal promotions and kind of hold things together here. But I think probably for Dave Aranda, that's probably not the right approach for 24 with obviously, like, the pressure you're going to be under here to really get things turned around here. So interested to see what kind of moves he can make to fill out this staff. And, obviously, everything you do now, there's a little bit of a portal factor, right? Of like, can you make some good hires that kind of give the players in those position rooms some confidence about moving forward here? Because all these coaches, are going to continue to kind of live in fear of that April portal window, and you don't want to be picked apart just because of changes on your staff and stuff like that. So important to get those hires right, and I think especially offensive line, it's just such an important, spot that you hope you got a great coach and developer and stuff like that. So, I think the guy they hired, I think that the Leach ties there makes a lot of sense for Jake Babineau. But, it's definitely unfortunate timing. It's just been kind of a weird cycle, guys, with how many of these coaching changes happened, after the national championship game.
Max, go enjoy the release of the game here just around the corner. Enjoy. Thanks for the segment.
Go fire up the Xbox.
Yep, there you go.
Thanks, guys.
That's Max Olson, theathletic.com. So here's a response to the release of the names of the broadcasters, Herb Street, Fowler, etc. All right? Molly McGrath, like seconds later. So exciting. I really hope that EA Sports College included female broadcasters as well. Women are a huge part of college football.
Yeah, I hope they pick people like Holly Rowe.
They weren't on the list.
Yeah,
now, I don't know if they listed everybody.
Hey, I'm telling you right now, if Holly Rowe is not in this game, it is not as realistic.
I don't care. I really don't care who's in the broadcasters. Does it matter?
I mean, if you want real, it was great when Lee Corso was in it. I'll tell you, I enjoyed the heck out of that. Although a lot of times you turn that, like, you're not even listening. You kind of, if you're playing with your friends, you're probably not listening to it that much. I don't care, but I do hope for the fact that, look, if you're going to make everything realistic, then Molly McGrath and Holly Rowe and those people need to be in the game.
Yeah,
I would also like to see, look, let's get every network involved. Let me, give me some Vern Lundquist. I guess he's not in anymore.
My question is, EA Sports tied into ESPN and ABC?
No, but they, like, in the last...
They got to get their trademarks for the purpose of having the broadcast in the game and all that.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. They know Joel Klatt or Gus Johnson?
Like, the several iterations of the game has always been kind of tied into ESPN because that's the easiest promotional arm to tie in with. Although, if they did Gus and Joel Klatt, that would be great.
I mean, I can get to them more off the radar. They're not the only ones that are part of it. There's other people that have already announced that they're part of it as well. Not Molly McGrath, and I don't know that a female has at this point, but to her point, maybe that's why she brought that up, because it's not just those two. There are a couple of other names that have been announced. Well, I might as well get to it now. Screw it. Reese Davis, David Pollock, Jesse Palmer, they've all announced that they're in the game as well. So maybe there's more to be announced, or maybe there's a bit of oversight that needs to be corrected. I don't know.
Pollock doesn't even work at ESPN anymore.
No.
Yeah.
He does not. All right, it's 4:19 around the corner. Graham Coffey, we brought him up yesterday. He covers Georgia. His thoughts about how the Big Ten and SEC should get the larger chunk of the teams and whatever the number might be, 12, 14, 16, or holler. He's next. This is 365 Sports. Samantha DeBall, TexasBeefHouse.com. The auctions keep on being, from what I can tell, a great success, Samantha.
Yes, and they are so much fun. We have people that come out that have never been to any type of auction, and they have so much fun. You can hear and feel the energy in the room, especially when people are high-fiving each other when they've won a lot, or you can tell when people are just bummed when they didn't get that one and they're waiting for the next one. But the energy is just so awesome.
Your father said it's been so successful, you're looking at doing even more and more into the future. Is that correct?
That is correct. We don't have a date yet, but we're looking at maybe possibly sometime in April doing another one. And this one will again be a live auction along with being able to bid online for people that are not local.
Farm-raised, aged Wagyu beef. And now people can get it as they want it. The fact that they can control how much they buy and also how much they pay. How really cool is that?
What we like to call it is price discovery. So we don't want to put a price on our product. We want you to decide what you want to pay for our product. So you get to bid what you want to pay.
Samantha Duvall, the great company that continues to set the standard in the beef business at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
We've had Graham Coffey on this show a handful of times. Baylor and Georgia met back in 2019 in the Big 12 championship game. He also covers college football. We've had him on for analysis on Georgia. And when the story came out about the Big 12, Big 10, ACC, and also the SEC with how the 12 teams would be fit, what are the automatic qualifiers, etc., Graham said that well, I'll let him explain. Graham, what do you think, and how should the first year of the 12 teams be broken down? They are going to have 4 conference champions and seeded 1 through 4, the 4 highest rated conference champions.
Yeah, so my general opinion on all of these scenarios with the college football playoff is that the best thing for the sport, the best thing for everybody is that we get the 12 best teams to play each other every year. My concern with the model that they have set up for 2024 and 2025, where the top 4 seeds and byes go to the top 4 ranked conference champions, is just that I think it does bring an element of disorder into the system, and then you have a potential for maybe some tanking or somewhere along the way. Like if you have a team that's a top 4 conference champion that maybe is a 3 or 4 loss team, like I think, you're going to look around and there's going to be somebody out there that's like, hey, I really, really want that 8 seed. So if I win my first round game, and I get to play a home game, by the way, as an added bonus, I get to go play, this 4 loss champion from wherever, so I think when I say these things, people think that it's an anti Big 12, anti-ACC sort of thing. But really what I think is that there's no sense in having seeding if the seeding is done out of order by which team is best.
Graham, yeah, I mean, and to your point, like that would kind of be opposite of what they do in the NCAA tournament, right? In the basketball tournament, you get a 1 seed because you're a 1 seed. You don't get a 1 seed because you won the conference title, because quite often that may not have actually happened, especially when it comes to the tournament. So, yeah, I could see where it's upside down. So what would you propose to make sure that it's still inclusive and it's not just an SEC Big Ten party?
Yeah, I think that conference champions should earn that right, especially in football. We're not talking about a week-long tournament like in basketball. Like you're talking about a season-long sample set. So win your conference title, and hats off to you. And especially now that we've reached this era of realignment where divisions have been basically eliminated from all these conferences, there's not a concern really of like a 4-loss Pittsburgh team winning an ACC championship like we had a couple years ago. Like your first and second team that are playing for a conference title, then that's great. Like I think that, if somebody comes through that, give them a bid, but if they're the 12th best team, then they're the 12th best team. Just because you're the SEC champion doesn't mean that, you're not the 6th best team in the country, because we've seen that happen before too. We've seen upsets happen, in the SEC title game. So, I mean, I think people think that this is talking about ACC Big 12 where, maybe there's more potential for a lesser team to sneak up, but I think you can still have a second place SEC winner who is not deserving of a top 4 seed. And I also think that this brings into play a scenario where I don't know that it's not a better deal if you are an SEC team to maybe be that third place team and avoid having to deal with that conference championship game, and getting an extra week of rest and then going and playing a home game is not a bad situation, instead of going and facing, say, Georgia and getting beat up by those guys before you got to go play a 3-week playoff.
Graham, don't worry about any backlash here. I want the honest feelings. If it was up to you, and let's say most Georgia fans, so it's not just all on you, but would you prefer a future where it is just an all Big Ten, SEC, invitational, the whole NFL light thing that has been widely debated, just knowing the passion and the fan base the way you do? Would Georgia fans and yourself sign up for that over what's being proposed, or do you like the inclusion of others at this point? Kind of where do you sit on the fence with that?
Yeah, no, I think Georgia fans, and especially speaking for myself, like, people love college football because it's college football, right? Like, if I want to go watch the NFL, I know where to find that product on Sunday afternoon. But I like college football because there is this regional scope, and within that regionality comes a lot of interesting traditions and figures and fan bases, and that is the color of the sport. We don't need another 30-team professional league. What we want is really what we already had. Like, personally would, prefer to see a playoff system that, I don't know that 12 teams is the best way to crown a champion. If it gets more teams into the playoff and creates more fan interest throughout the entirety of the season, then I think that's a good thing for everybody, and it's certainly a good thing for people like you and me that do what we do. But I am not a believer in this idea of like, oh, just because the Big Ten and SEC have signed a bunch of big contracts that we need to cut them off from, the rest of the body. Like, you guys have watched enough college football seasons like I have. Like, you've seen Baylor, come up and have there's innovations that happen in this sport all the time that give teams an advantage. We've seen West Virginia come a game away from playing for a national title. None of those teams were undeserving of being in those situations. So the idea that we're all of a sudden going to say that basically because of TV money, all these other teams are now eliminated from contention for forever that would be a travesty, and it would ruin the sport forever, in my opinion.
With Texas and OU moving to the SEC, do you believe that a Big 12 champion, if they run the table this year, no matter who it might be, if they were to run the table this year, is worthy of being seated ahead of whoever wins the SEC?
I mean, how many losses does the SEC champion have in this scenario?
Okay, let's say someone goes, I don't even know, 12-1?
I think I would still probably give the nod to the SEC teams, depending on what their schedule looks like. But, I think a Big 12 team that runs the table is still a very, very impressive candidate. I think that team is still worthy of being considered in national title contention. I'm not sure that I would, at this moment, say, the gauntlet that they've run is the same as maybe a 12-1 SEC team. Like look at Georgia's schedule this year, to be fair, I think Georgia could go 10-2 in the regular season and still be the best team in the country. I could come to that belief depending on how it all plays out and injury luck and all of those things.
Graham, the SEC, right now still going to be in the 8-game conference schedule. Eventually they will go to 9. In your opinion, when they go to 9, what game is sacrificed in the value of that 9? Is it that dummy game the second to last week of the season, or is it something else?
I think it will be SoCon Saturday. Yeah. I hope so, certainly, for quality of product. And man, it's tough to get excited about covering that game when, you're that far into the season and we've already seen some good conference play happen. So that would be great. What I don't want to happen is Georgia and Clemson, for example, they had a really great rivalry throughout the 70s and the 80s, and it kind of was dormant for a while, and they started playing each other more and more. They'll open this year against each other. They've got more games scheduled out over the next 8 to 10 years. Same with Georgia and Florida State. Those games need to be played, especially those games that they might not be in conference games yet, I guess, but they are regional games that have history behind them. I'm a fan of more of those types of games, especially when they're played on campus.
Graham, did the results of this past season and Georgia finishing where they finished outside of the playoff sway folks, you think, who are maybe sitting in the middle on the idea of expansion? Did it push them in the direction of bigger groups, or is this kind of an outlier, you think, that doesn't really tell the full tale for a team like Georgia in a 14 playoff?
No, I think there was definitely a shift in the Georgia fan base. Just within our own forum community on my website, I saw a lot of people kind of go from thinking this 12-team playoff is too many games and there's going to be too much wear and tear on college players, and that it's excessive because there's not 12 teams every year that are really worthy of winning a national title, to saying, hey, at least we're never going to go 12-0 and, lose a SEC championship game by 3 points and then not have a chance to play for it all again. I think that, people have kind of come around on that, while still probably also admitting that they think there's an issue with asking kids that hopefully have professional football careers ahead of them to play potentially a 17-game season. I think that bothers a lot of people.
Graham, should what happened last year, the last 10 years, the last 20 years, or tradition and history have anything to do with how the college football playoff is set when it comes to the 12 teams or more?
Do you mean in terms of like who gets automatic bids and all of that good stuff?
Just okay. Well, Georgia, they're on a great run. Alabama, that are teams that have been really good. But before Georgia got really, really good, they were kind of flailing. Clemson got really, really good. Before that, they were good and bad, or not bad, but you know what I mean. Should any of that matter when they go to pick the 12 teams to play in the 2024 college football playoff?
No, not at all. I mean, this sport is incredibly cyclical, to your point. And, I saw the report that Ross Dellinger put out yesterday, and other people kind of followed his reporting, talking about, hey, now they want to push it to 14 teams, and they want to have, maybe as many as 12 of those 14 bids be automatic qualifiers and all of that stuff. And it's like, that's crazy. Like, let's make the conference championship games mean something. I'm okay with that. Or get rid of them entirely. But, you can't have it both ways, I guess. I don't like the idea of overly structuring this thing. What makes the NCAA tournament fun is that the conference championship week before it comes with a lot of drama, right? And like the thing about college football is it's always had the best regular season in sports, the best ever. It's every week is an elimination game of sorts. And so, if there is a year where we have two really, really good group of 5 teams, then let's have 2 really, really good group of 5 teams. And maybe there's a 10 seed and a 12 seed, but at least they're in the dance. I mean, like I saw TCU beat Michigan. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I watched them lose by 58 to Georgia with my own eyes a week later, but like, you can't act like only one of those things happened. People have used that national title game as an argument against including all these other leagues or, potential teams. And it's like, no, I mean, they won in a 1-game scenario, and that matters. And I can promise you it mattered for their fans. Like, so the idea that all that matters is the winner. And, if you don't get there, then everything else was discounted. That's crazy to me. There has to be space for weird stuff to happen, because that's what the sport has been for a century or more, is a really weird thing where, these little microwave excitements kind of pop up all over the country. And sometimes it's a great coach. Sometimes it's a new offense. Sometimes it's a transcendent quarterback. But, the idea that this portal and this NIL and all this thing, that's all going to shift at some point here. So planning out a playoff for decades in the future, like everything that's happening in this moment is going to continue happening. It seems very short-sighted to me.
Last thing, of the 12-team playoff, they're looking at the automatic qualifiers. They have the 4 conference champions. The highest ranked will get seeded 1 through 4. Of the 12 teams, should that be predetermined on how many are automatic qualifiers for any conference other than the 4 conference champions? Or actually 5.
I don't think so.
Group is 5 too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, as you know, like I think the 4 conference champions should be guaranteed a bid. I don't even think they should get those top 4 seeds. But beyond that, let's just sit down and decide who the best teams in the country are, right? Like, yes, there's always going to be an argument between 11, 12, 13, 14, and that's just part of it. But no, we shouldn't be structuring this out to the point where we're saying right now, like, hey, in 2029, the Big 12 is only going to have 2 teams that are worthy of playing for a national title. Like, I don't know that. Deion might stay at Colorado and, keep building that thing into a powerhouse. Look at what Utah does every year, basically. I mean, there's tons of potential for a lot of other teams to be in very different places. Yeah, we can't do that. And maybe there are years where it is 5 SEC teams or 5 Big Ten teams. If those are 5 of the 12 best teams, then that's fine. But there also should be space left for years where they're not.
By the way, Graham, when we tweeted back and forth, and then a lot of, I guess some that followed me started asking him questions. And I asked you, I said, my God, did I keep you up late into the night? And you said your dog kept you up. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we, my wife and I live on about 10 acres, and there were some coyotes kind of howling in the distance the other night. We have like a giant Great Pyrenees who weighs like 120 pounds and thinks it's his job to protect everybody. So he heard them once, and then he just was barking at absolutely nothing for the rest of the night, like every 30 minutes. So not your user's fault.
No, and you were good responding to people. And then those here in the chat today, when we had you on, what we like to do is bring in different opinions and let our viewers and even ourselves form our own opinions based on the information, not this is what you should think. Even a few that weren't so sure they wanted to listen have said, no, but you know what? The more I listen to this guy, he's more on the same page as we are than maybe we first thought. So I'm glad we had you on, Graham. Enjoy. And those Coyotes, by the way, are the group of five, the ACC, and the Big 12. You know that, right? Those are the Coyotes.
I'll keep that in mind.
Thanks, man. Graham Coffey, dogcentral.com. I brought him on because of exactly what I just told him at the end. And I think a lot of you, would you actually listen to him, doesn't mean you have to agree with anything. But it was different to hear him online, and you could follow him if you want. If you don't, that's fine as well.
Well, I can be talked into the fact that, like, you're going to get an automatic bid if you're the conference champion, but you're not going to get a first round bye if you're not one of the best teans. Mm-hmm. So I can get behind that. I can get behind that. Now, look, if that happens to mean that like the first round buys are all SEC teams, and Big Ten teams, or like 3 and then 1 rando, then fine. That is what it is. You're still in the playoff. Notre Dame's living that life anyway, right? If they're going to get in the playoff, they're going to play all those games anyway. So yeah, I think that to me makes more sense than,
But then if you do the 4 teams that are the highest ranked who get into 12, are you getting back to being subjective again?
Yeah.
Are you getting back into, this team here gets a first round bye, this one doesn't? Are you getting back to where instead of those are going to be the 4 and then everything else falls into place?
You can also run the risk of
5.
a 9-3 team being a 12-0 team in the championship game, and the 12-0 team still gets a bye, and the championship game meant nothing to them.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, in reading his tweet yesterday, it came across a certain type of way, and then it's why you can't just take Twitter at face value a lot of times, because there's a little bit more nuance and maybe a tone that's missing, because you could clearly read that tweet yesterday. I think we kind of talked about at the end of the show and get the impression of, we should just basically hand the SEC and the Big Ten all the top spots because they're just better, basically. It's kind of how it came across, but very subjective. And no, he's got a thought-out reason as to why, or some logic behind his, I guess, not argument, but his stance. And so, yeah, it's good to hear other people and not just, shut your ears off to any different opinion from yours. And so glad we could kind of flesh that out a little bit and not as cross as far as our opinions go as maybe one would originally think based on that first tweet. But, yeah, good to have Graham on, and I think he has some good points, and I think we're all just sort of figuring out in our own heads, we're trying to fantasy book this thing and what would be best in our eyes. And so that's his take, and some maybe are changed a little bit by what he had to say. Maybe you go even further in the opposite direction. I don't know, but we can all have our own takes on it, and that was his, and so I appreciate him giving us that time. And I appreciate the fact that it wasn't just like – it would have been easier, honestly, to have a pretty combative little pod here if he had come and be like, yeah, the SEC's 6 teams better than the ACC champ most years, and have been like, well, bull, and then we could really get into it, but that's not the argument.
That's not the argument. By the way, Bracket Cat – I think some of this is tongue-in-cheek, but also a little bit of a zinger at the Big Ten. Here's my solution. Number of the auto bids be based on the past 10 years of title-winning history. So under that criteria, the SEC will have 4. The Big Ten would then get no more than the Big 12 recalculate each year. Well, the Big Ten had just the champion now. Ohio State when was Ezekiel Elliott?
That was 2014. That was the first one.
So that's in the last 10 years. So they do have a couple of teams right there.
And they had like 0-2. Depending on how far you want to come,
Ohio State
back.
upset Miami and
but
all that,
beyond that, though, like Penn State gets an awful lot of credit for just being there and being pretty good to above average most of the time. Wisconsin's steady, but never a true threat that I think you would lump in with those other schools as far as like when you're reeling off Michigan and Ohio State national title contenders, like on a good year and a good run, Wisconsin could be in there. Penn State could be in there. Iowa, I guess, could be in there. Nebraska, just, rolling through these teams. But, really, I think more so than for the SEC, the big push for the Big Ten was getting who they added in. Because now when you can point to USC and Oregon and Washington, well, that changes things. Because prior to that, you're basically looking at Michigan and Ohio State as your surefire things, and then a Penn State. And again, we can go down the list of who may or may not be competitive there. But, yeah, I think more so than the SEC. Because in the SEC, you've had 6 different teams that have won national titles in the same time span since 2000 that we're talking with Ohio State and Michigan having won 3 together. You've had Auburn and Florida and Bama and Georgia and LSU, and they've all...
And Tennessee. Well, Tennessee was 98.
No, it was 98. And other than Auburn, all have won at least 2.
Florida won 96, 2. And then again...
Yeah,
2000.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Urban Meyer had 2.
Yeah.
I'm just putting a starting point here.
Yeah.
So, like, all those teams have won more than 1. They hadn't just won 1. They've won, and that's a handful of teams, even if they had all just won 1. So they were already deep. Whereas now you add Oklahoma and Texas to that, and you can see where the perspective's coming from of, like, any given year you feel like, yeah, we should have, like, 4 teams in here, bare minimum, if not more. Although I do think you start to go into the records, and it doesn't take too long till you get to, like, the number 6 team, and you're like, all right, this team's got, like, 4 losses. I don't know that you necessarily want them in the playoff, but it'll be interesting to see with Texas and Oklahoma inserted, what those standings look like when you start to get to 6 and 7 with the schedules a bit more spread out with so many teams. But, yeah, the Big Ten, point being, they get a huge influx of top programs, if you will,
and
contenders.
And alphas, yeah.
They do.
They did
outside
of
just the game participants.
And even the second level when Oregon and Washington joined them. I don't know. It's MOSITOX and then a space C. Some people think the Big 12 is equivalent to the SEC and Big 10. I don't know of many people that say that.
I don't think I've heard anybody really say that.
I think I've heard people say they want that opportunity. And, Kansas State had the opportunity
I think more
a couple of years ago, and Alabama bludgeoned them, Georgia, TCU. I don't think anybody, with truly being honest, thinks that the Big 12 in football is better, and especially than the upper part, midsection and above of the SEC.
The argument comes, though, that, look, is Mississippi State better than Kansas State just because Mississippi State has SEC's patch on their jersey?
Right.
That's
a great
problem.
point. Yeah, I think most people believe that. Yeah.
Nobody is saying that Kansas State at their best is as good as Georgia or Alabama at their best, because we've actually seen that played out, and it's not true, right? It wasn't true that year that Bama and Kansas State played in the Cotton Bowl just a couple years ago. And Kansas State had a fantastic team that year. Bama's was more fantastic. That's just how it was. The issue is that the SEC gets this street cred. Like, Ole Miss will get a bump from the Egg Bowl, but Kansas wouldn't get a bump from the Sunflower Showdown if the records of the losers of that game were the same. Right. So Kansas beats their big rival in their rivalry game by the same amount of points, and the records are exactly the same, and the numbers are exactly the same. But because Mississippi State has that SEC patch, then Ole Miss is like, well, that's one more SEC win. Well, no, that's a win over a team that's exactly the same as the team that the Big 12 team won over. That's the issue, is that they're drafting they're drafting off of the history year in and year out, and it's not dealing with is this team actually that good right now?
Yeah, I don't think there's a real argument by anybody being serious that the top tier is better in the Big 12 or even necessarily on par. I think there's years where you could argue they have about the same amount of maybe quote-unquote elite teams, but I think, the SEC is going to win that argument because of a Georgia or Alabama 9 times out of 10. I think the arguments are what they point out, and also just the accessibility of like there's an attitude from some that they don't even deserve a shot, based on just nothing other than the conference they're in and the perception of people of that conference. Like, oh, well, you're just not as good because you're in the Big 12. And it's like, And there are arguments that, Mississippi State is better than like the number 2 team in the Big 12, even though Mississippi State's like 10th in that league. And it's just like, that's bullshit. I'm sorry, but that's just take off your Feinbaum glasses and just admit that other teams and other leagues can be good. And I think that's where people get annoyed, is this idea that the 10th team is better than most leagues' like third best team. And I don't think normally that's ever the case. But that's the perception and the way that it comes across. And so that's what I think you're dealing with more than they're equal and that type of an argument. I think that's more what you get.
All right, when we come back, Craig Smoak, a bunch when it comes to Off the Radar, and also Mickey Spagnola about half an hour from now on the NFL and the Cowboys and Paul's Top 5. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. 1943, they opened up their doors, and they were in the same location with all the facilities, and they would add to it, update it, and do all they did during decade after decade after decade. And then a little over a year and a half ago, about a year or a little bit less than a year and a half ago, they moved into a mega building, facility, exploded. Bigger, better, faster, and stronger. A 2,500 square foot showroom with 1,000 new products to show off. Pipe, steel, and metal. That's what they are great at doing. They also can help you find contractors for the various jobs that you want to do, whether real estate or commercial. They have the distribution area is now more efficient, and it was already really good. So you're talking about pipe, steel, and metal. You're talking about all the other things you need to build something with pipe, steel, and metal. Heavy product. And so if you have somebody that's going to go, you order, you pick it up, you do that with your salesperson, you're going to go pick it up. They now have even more bays and more areas for you to pull up your hauler, 18-wheeler, pickup truck or more, to take whatever you're buying, whatever you're picking up, and take it back to the area you're about to build something. 1943 until now. Brand new location, for the most part, on the east side of I-35 on Loop 340 and east of 84 in Waco.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, where we talk about how the Big 12 is better than the SEC. No, I'm just kidding. This is where we talk about some things outside of college football, and sometimes we'll dabble in a little bit of college football as well, depending on the subject on these days where we do this segment. But yeah, I mean, going back to that and just following up, let's make it clear. We're not saying that the Big 12 is, or the ACC for that matter, is better per se or anything like that. It's just the arguments get really old when you say the fifth best team's better than the conference champion and just treat that as fact. It's all very subjective, all of it, even our opinions. So interesting thing to I guess argue about, but I'll let that continue in the chat.
Sandra Green said anyone who thought that the Big 12 was better than the SEC was delusional, and I didn't think anyone had. But there are a couple of that on there that feel that way.
Well,
by the way, that's fine. You can have your opinion.
Any given year,
I can't get there.
Given year, you can argue that the Big 12 champ could compete with like maybe the top 2 or 3 teams, but I think when you start getting to that 4 and 5 and 6, and it becomes like kind of ridiculous. And it's some of it's probably trolling, but I think that's when it's just disrespectful. And it's like, come on, the gap's not that wide. Like, let's have some respect for the athletes in other leagues. But anyways, I want to focus on some off the radar type of things here, and I'll let that continue on in the chat. But regardless of where you stand on that, we do appreciate you, and we welcome all college football fans. Absolutely. So, have you guys watched that Johnny Manziel interview with
I've only seen
Shannon Sharp?
I only saw the clip of it. Garrett and I watched it earlier.
About losing weight?
About losing weight.
There's a bunch of things in this interview. Club Shay Shay podcast. Shannon Sharp, really his star just continuing to rise in the media world, much less sports media. But there were several articles coming off of this interview because Johnny had a bunch of different interesting things to say. And I won't delve into all of the topics, but there was one write-up I came across that hit some of the high points pretty well from, I believe it was Yahoo. So I'll just hit on some of those highlights. And we can just unpack it as we go along here. He mentioned that, or he got into the subject of Kevin Sumlin, who was his head coach, obviously, there at Texas A&M, had a pretty good thing going. One of his quotes on Sumlin was, "I love that guy, and we were best buddies, but how do you have a guy telling you how to live, put away the partying and all that when he's doing the same thing behind doors? What made him great is no longer with him. I don't see the spark." There was Johnny on Kevin Sumlin, and I guess Kevin Sumlin expecting one thing, but not to, do as I say, not as I do. I guess a little bit of that going on there in College Station. But I thought that line of what made him great is no longer with him. I don't see the spark. I thought that was very interesting and probably a little bit on point, man, because since College Station, the Kevin Sumlin roller coaster has been on a downward slide pretty much the entire time. Very forgettable tenure at Arizona and so on. And so he had that comment about Kevin Sumlin. Of course, one of the big taboo subjects or the big touchy subjects for Texas A&M during that Sumlin era was the handling of quarterbacks post-Johnny when you had Kyle Allen and Kyler Murray and basically had set yourself up with the future with 2 pro quarterbacks because Kyle Allen's been how many years in the league now at this point?
Yeah.
He's long been a veteran at this stage. Obviously, Kyler's still in a high-profile spot, but Johnny said that he played a huge hand in bringing Kyler Murray to Texas A&M. That mistake is keeping us from being where we want to be now. They should have given him the keys, talking about Kyler. I worked my ass off to get him to A&M. He wanted to be like me. I have extremely strong and mixed emotions about that. So there was his comment on Kyler Murray and that whole ordeal. I don't hear it brought up as much because it's been a few years, but how much do you think that really set them back in the long run? Because they were cruising, baby.
They had, and look, he didn't have the same kind of problem that Jimbo did with that number 1 recruiting class where now it's all gone.
Yeah.
Again, the rules are different, but Jimbo also had to let go of like 8 of them before they would even get to the transfer portal. Like that's how rough that class was. But they had classes that had guys leave. I think they had their first top 5 class under Sumlin, which they were 5th. And it was like, holy cow, this guy's recruiting like crazy. They had offense out the wazoo. Manziel had just created this buzz around College Station, of which there'd never been before.
It really hasn't been since then, honestly. I mean, there's been Joe Burrow, maybe you could throw in there.
Kenny Hill Oh, you're talking about
college
A&M?
football.
Okay.
As far as like a
No, I was
guy,
talking about A&M.
a guy, like one guy bringing the kind, like even Caleb Williams doesn't have that kind of buzz that Johnny or even Joe did.
Not Johnny level, no.
Not Johnny level buzz. They had created a situation in College Station where the biggest star in maybe even sports for that like a little bit of time, like the most recognizable name was outside of the diamond level people, but was Johnny Football. And Kevin Sumlin could not, and you see that, like alcoholism playing a part in it. Johnny would be able to identify that really easily, considering that he's.
I'll get to that.
Fighting those same demons. But yeah, they did. I mean, that Kyle Allen, Kyler Murray thing was absolutely. I was at Kyler Murray's first game, and I remember watching him and going, "Man, this kid is raw cookie dough, man." But holy cow, when he gets out of the oven, holy cow, it was going to be special. And they messed that up. And they messed it up. And how to lose. They lost both of them within a week of each other into the portal.
Yeah.
And you're like, how do you go from having two guys who could start for you to zero? And if not for the grace and beauty of Trevor Knight, they would have been in a very bad way. Very bad way.
That was the downfall of the Sumlin era, was all that right there, and they've never quite been able to grab that momentum the same way ever since then. And he also brought up during that time period that Kingsbury was trying to become the highest paid offensive coordinator in college football when Johnny decided to come back for his final year. And he said that Kevin walked away from both of us. So he had some harsh words for Kevin Sumlin here, some critiques for Kevin Sumlin, talking about him walking away from both he and Cliff, and then also losing the spark and just the mishandling of the quarterback situation. I don't think any of that's brand new news, but it's interesting to hear him talk about it. And as far as staying for that one more season, we know NIL was not around back then, but he did make mention that his father had asked Sumlin for $2 to $3 million to get Johnny to stay for another season. And Johnny said that he did not find that out until about 4 years ago, that his father had made that request. But you can only imagine the NIL money that he would have garnered following that Heisman run would have been insane, I think, and certainly probably the top guy in college sports back at that time period, given how bright his star was shining. So, yeah, you had to do it under the table, and that led to the jersey signings and all of that big mess.
Which was under the table.
Was under the table.
So if he was wanting $3 million, his father $3 million over a 2-year period of time, what would he be? If
it was one more season that he was wanting $2 to $3 million.
I thought it said 2. Okay.
No, he asked someone for $2 to $3 million to get Johnny to stay for one more season.
Okay.
Yeah, so that means he probably was hoping for 2 and asked for 3. And if he was going to get $2 million, and again, there's not many players as valuable as Johnny was to even a specific place as he was to A&M. So now you're probably 3 or 4, like $5 million. I mean, look, if Imaliava is going to get 8 before he even takes a snap, what is Johnny going to get? For winning the Heisman.
You're looking at like 10. I mean, after a post-Heisman, if a rookie quarterback, freshman quarterback's coming in and allegedly getting 7. Now, we don't know. Is that 7 for 4 years?
It's over. It's spread out.
So,
who knows?
But Johnny's getting 7 for a season then, probably.
Well, we've seen it. The deal is out. The NIL collective had to release the deal because of all this stuff going on. So they have like a... it's a tiered thing. Like I
think I remember seeing that.
It's not $7 million right away, but if he stays for 3 or 4 years, he's going to get most of it, or if not all. But Johnny, if people don't understand what he means to A&M, if you're thinking my quarterback at my school was just as big of a deal, I encourage you to go to Kyle Field, even on a day where they're not having a game, because you can go into and take the tour and walk into the area, which is now like the alumni entrance, and tell me who you see more pictures of, Johnny Football or Dat Win, who was equally as big of a legend, at times as maybe Johnny was. And it's
Johnny.
More Johnny.
It's his number 2 jersey. Yeah.
So elsewhere, I'll get to the most salacious part, I guess the part that I've heard from people the most about at the very end. But one more subject before we get to that, and that was him talking about how he let LeBron James down. LeBron, obviously, big Cleveland guy, Akron native, but big Cleveland guy. And he was with the Cavaliers, and he was all about like trying to help out Johnny, wanted to bring him under their umbrella and did, and was trying to mentor him and do everything that he could to help out Johnny. And Johnny said, I remember this is how bad off I was whenever I was in Cleveland. LeBron would text me every week to come over to the house and watch a game, play poker with the boys, just tried to be there. I was so depressed for the first time in my life that even my biggest role model inspiration couldn't get me out of bed to come hang out with him. When I went to the Cavs games, I went in, I was out. I didn't really grasp and latch onto him in a way that I should have. He tries to take me under his wing, and I was just kind of nudging it away because of where my mental is and being fully depressed and where I was in my life. Is that an excuse? Absolutely not, because at the end of the day, the respect that I should have for them, giving me everything, should trump all else. That's got to be a hard thing to really come to grips with, man. You basically just threw the birds at LeBron James and Maverick Carter and like the most powerful sports entity probably going right now in clutch sports. And they tried everything to help. They're inviting you over to the house, and you're just so
into yourself or stoned.
Depressed or stoned or drunk and all those things combined that you just kind of brushed it off, and now years later you're coming to the realization, and that's a hard part. That's why some people just keep drinking, because they don't want to have to deal with the reality of that. So kudos to Johnny for, as tough as that is, it's still better to have to deal with those things and realize your massive mistakes in life than to still be sipping at the bottle and probably be dead at this point. So that's the trade-off, but that's still something that's got to be pretty tough, is to acknowledge how badly you kind of disrespected the king there in LeBron James. So that was clearly one of his big, failures for sure, but regrets was certainly the way he treated LeBron James. Now let's get to the most salacious part. Would that not be the weight discussion? So here's Johnny Manziel. He's on Club Shay Shay, and he said that he weighed 210 pounds when he left the Cleveland Browns, when they cut him in March of 2016, and his lifestyle was so bad that he leaves the NFL, or leaves the Browns, in March 2016 at 210 pounds. By that fall, he weighed 170 pounds. And Sharp asked him, he's like, is it all blow? Like, how do you lose 40 pounds? And he said that he talked about, like, I guess in that part of having been drafted by the Cowboys and how that would have been just an absolute disaster, and him even being close. I mean, can y'all imagine? And as much blowback as Jerry got for that, like,
it was Zach Martin, who's a Hall of Famer, so it worked out well.
It worked out pretty well in the long run for him, but it was a situation where he lost 40 pounds. And said that a lot of that just had to do with his lifestyle and not taking care of himself and all the partying. Very fortunate.
You said a steady diet of blow.
Steady diet of blow. There you go. That was the line I was trying to get back to. The steady diet of blow was basically what he attributes that to, and that'll do it. That'll do it. There's not a lot of big old cokeheads rolling around, as far as my knowledge goes. At least the stereotype, at least, is the skinny, strung out, and that certainly was Johnny by that point in time.
The skinny is how they get you. No, but I one of the things now, like, he really needs to count his lucky stars, because if he had done that now, he would definitely be dead, because you can't.
With fentanyl.
You can't, with the fentanyl that's coming across the border and mixed into the cocaine, he'd be dead.
I mean, he could, not guaranteed, but a very good chance, yes.
Yeah.
Very good chance he could have come across as a bad
story
batch.
Would have broken, with all due respect, and I know his dad pretty well, and I've traded some texts with him, but not lately. That story that Johnny Manziel was found in a hotel room or whatever would not have been a surprise.
No, it wouldn't have. And he said at that point in time, I would look in the mirror, didn't even realize he was losing weight necessarily, but he said he would look in the mirror and didn't see himself as any different than when he was still playing with the Browns. And the big moment came in Las Vegas. He said, until I stepped on a scale at the Cosmo in Las Vegas, I didn't realize I had lost 40 pounds. He continued to visit Vegas, continued to party despite realizing that. And he said, I remember these pictures came out and I was like, damn, what am I doing? Whatever, we'll figure that out later. Let's go again. And it was these pictures of him at a pool party where he had clearly shrunk down. And he saw those and realized it and realized he lost 40 pounds. And that's the addict. And you're like, who's got the next round? And this back to party. And so interesting interview there with Shannon Sharp and Johnny Manziel. And I'm kind of over Johnny's comeback, as far as obviously football's over with, but I don't necessarily latch on to every interview anymore because he's done quite a few of them. But this was interesting because Shannon Sharp does a good job, and I think you've got Johnny further down the line as well, where he's probably grown and realized some things. So definitely regrets how he treated LeBron. And had some words about someone that were interesting. But, yeah, if you want to check that out, go right ahead. But that was definitely off the radar, but something still of interest to me. All right, so elsewhere, a couple of other things. How about the Matt Araiza story? The former collegiate standout, the punter from San Diego State who could just boom it, who had what looked like a pretty surefire NFL career in front of him until some allegations came out. Back in 2022, right before the season started, he had been drafted in the 6th round by Buffalo, and that was in the 2022 NFL draft. And then right before the season started, there was a civil lawsuit that accused him of being a part of a gang rape of a minor during an off-campus party at San Diego State back in 2021. Back in December of 22, prosecutors have said that neither Araiza nor any of the Aztec teammates who were also mentioned in there and accused in the report of assault that they were involved. And I guess it was in December 22 that was announced that they wouldn't be charged. And I think we touched on that way back at that point in time. But last year he was dropped entirely from the lawsuit filed by the victim. And in doing that, he also agreed to dismiss the defamation countersuit against the alleged victim. So there was that went ongoing. But now, with all of that behind him, he is now back in the NFL as he has signed a contract with the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs and said in a statement, "I'm proud and honored to sign a contract with the Chiefs. I am thrilled to be able to continue my NFL career. I want to thank my family who have been my rock and my many friends who have been unwavering in their support." So, they've got a punter and Tommy Townsend who will be a free agent, and so they signed Matt Araiza, and he's getting another crack. And you got to let the justice system play out. But man, what a just a bad deal, I guess, in general.
When the prosecution says that none of them were even there. Like that's the thing. It's like, well,
but man, I remember reading a lot of this piece of, and all that, right away.
And it has a very Duke lacrosse-esque feel to it. And the thing that's really
that never really fully got pulled back the way that it should have. I think a lot of the news corporations were like, let's just move on here.
There's a great 30 for 30 about it.
Yes,
They're the only ones who did. But for every Duke lacrosse in situation like this, there's 99% of them are true, but this one untrue one does a lot of damage to those people who are fighting to have their voices heard.
Yes.
Did he have a civil suit after that?
Well, he did. I just said he dropped it.
Okay.
She sued him back, and then he's like, the agreement was, we'll just drop the civil suits.
Everybody dropped everything and moved on,
Okay.
Basically all moved on, So he is back in the NFL.
You ever seen the highlight of him with the 82-yard punt?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. He's unbelievable.
So he is with the Kansas City Chiefs, and we will see how that works out for him in the long run. But just not going to let that story go without following it up a little bit. And so there you go with Matt Araiza. And we'll see if that's like a feel-good comeback story. Obviously, the subject matter just absolutely sucks and is not fun to discuss. But innocent until proven guilty is what it's supposed to be. And here he got his, I guess, his just due there at the end. So
and Mickey on the chat room going, it's the opposite now. When it comes to women accusing men of sexual assault, you're guilty.
Online, I think that's a sentiment that's become far too common of just automatically you see an allegation and you just, boom, you go, they're guilty. And I think that's gotten way out of control for sure. And you got to let things play out. And so in this case, I'm sure there's a lot of deleted tweets or just tweets that people forgot they drew up 2 years ago. But there you go with that. There's a follow-up on that. So a couple of other things before we move on entirely. You passed along this note to me. It's a small thing, but for the Baylor fans out there, not so much. Michael Ford, head track coach for the Bears, headed to the 2024 Olympic Games. He will be the men's sprints and hurdles coach for Team USA. So congratulations to Michael Ford. That's a cool honor.
It's a hell of a deal.
Baylor turns out like their track, what Clyde Hart did and built here, and Michael Ford, and of course Todd Harbor before him, and then Michael Ford. They all learned under him. Michael Ford's one of the best track coaches in the country, especially with. Baylor's a program that has a lot of elite track athletes. They've never won an overall national title because that you need, more full scholarships to do
Track
that.
and field.
Yeah, track and field. But
Right.
they have won many individual events, and they've had many Olympians, Michael Johnson being the most famous among them, Trayvon Bromell currently, all
Jeremy
Warner. Yeah, all those guys. Darrell Williamson, he was also on the, a medal winner. So you've got all these dudes. So I'm not surprised that Michael Ford is getting that honor. He's very much earned it.
You mentioned Bromell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Trayvon
Yeah,
Bromell.
yeah.
Trayvon
He's the most
Bromell.
recent.
We
Yeah.
once
Warner.
had him on WhatsApp on the show.
He was in Germany or something like
Germany
that.
or
Yeah.
Italy or something. Just run an event.
Yep.
Yep. So Michael Ford, now the men's sprints hurdles coach for Team USA, coming up this summer in Paris, and so that's a good deal. And then Big 12 tie-in, the head men's coach, USA track and field, is Stanley Redwine from Kansas. So he will be there along with him amongst some other coaches as well. But that's got to be cool, dude. You go over to the Olympics as a coach in Paris and Team USA and all that jazz. That's pretty sweet. All right, I start to wind it down here. Did want to make mention that there is a new documentary coming out that I think will be of interest, because when there's sports movies or things like that start to come out, I want to mention them and kind of throw in some of the pop culture aspect here. But Netflix has announced one of their newest sports projects that'll be on the horizon here soon, announcing yesterday a new documentary about the Montreal Expos and the setbacks that led to their departure from Montreal, where they played for 35 years, making one playoff appearance in those 35 years. But every year, starting out with the hopes of, even if it was unrealistic, a shot to win the World Series.
Yeah, shocking.
And
even if it wasn't realistic.
College football could learn from
in
that.
1994, had the strike not happened,
buddy.
they would have been in
loaded.
the playoffs.
Yep.
They had the best team. Now, would they
I
have won
want
the
to say
World
that record,
Series?
this is a guess, like 60-32.
They
or
were
something like
unbelievable.
that.
I mean, Larry Walker was on that team. I mean, Larry Walker was about to hit 400. Just ridiculous things were going on.
Yeah.
In that 94 Expos team. Pedro, Dennis Martinez, they were great.
They had a squad, yeah.
They were 70-40 when the
strike happened.
Jeez.
Now, would they have won the World Series? Who knows? It's always tough.
74,
but that would have been their pinnacle season.
Yeah. So Netflix is working on a new documentary looking at the departure of the Expos and moving to eventually become the Washington Nationals back in 2004. So that is on the horizon. But in some of the press release surrounding this, or in some of the write-ups surrounding this, I'd also made mention that, besides the whole we're proud to do this, you had the statement from one of those the companies involved. Richard Spear is a president of Attraction, who's the production company. He said the Expos were the first MLB team outside the U.S., and despite their departure from Montreal, they continue to have passionate fans to this day. This film will tell the story of the team through the eyes of those who lived it. There's still a push to get them another expansion team eventually, but it looks like Las Vegas is in line for that, and I know that Salt Lake City is really trying to get involved in that as well, amongst some other spots, but I wonder if we do see baseball back in Montreal ever again. But in the press release about it, they also announced that cameras are already following the Boston Red Sox, as they will also be doing a docuseries on the 2024 Red Sox, and are also working on a documentary about the 2004 Red Sox, a series that will focus on their first World Series title in 86 years. So a couple of Red Sox projects also in the works for Paul over here.
The one in this year, they're going to hope there's a strike.
Yeah,
no,
maybe.
Actually, I've got a great title for the one from this year. It's called "Are You Effing Kidding Me?"
Yeah.
2024, baby.
Yeah.
So there is. Sorry, Jeff. Something else you want to say?
I just wanted to throw in about I just looked at the 94 Red Sox roster, and this is not the same person. But anytime I get to think of him, I like to bring him up. There's a Major League Baseball player that had the same name as our former co-host,
Butch Henry.
Yep. He was one of the pitchers on the 94.
Montreal.
The 94 Expos. He was one of the pitchers on that 94.
But he had a
Expos
goatee
team.
and a beard.
Yeah, he was not our Butch Henry, but he was a Butch Henry.
Yeah.
He was on that team. The outfield was Marquise Grissom, Larry Walker, and Moises Alou.
That's pretty
Was
sweet,
Cliff
dude.
Floyd on that team too?
Cliff Floyd was the first
pretty sick.
baseman.
Yeah.
So there's that. So we'll have plenty of Expos coming up in the next few months, I would imagine, when that gets all finished up. But that is heading your way on Netflix, and some Red Sox content for those who are Red Sox or just baseball fans. And I'll close it out with this, something Gary to pass along. We don't talk any hockey. I want to say we don't really talk that much. We don't talk any hockey.
Nope.
But this was interesting that the Next wave of the outdoor series, the stadium series that the NHL has been doing for a little while now, will take place at Ohio Stadium in 2025. As you see there on the graphic, the Detroit Red Wings and the hometown Columbus Blue Jackets, and you see that red O? Yes, that is Ohio Stadium, home of the Buckeyes. So on March 1st of 2025, an outdoor game between the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings at the Horseshoe, which can hold over 100,000 fans, but it'll be the first big Columbus event as far as the NHL goes since they hosted the All-Star Game, which was back in 2015. So a lot of excitement about this. And they started doing this way back in 2008, these outdoor games. So now at the Horseshoe,
have they done Wrigley Field, Fenway Park?
They've been around.
Yeah.
They did Ralph Wilson Stadium in Buffalo, was like the very first one that they did. They had the Sabres as a part of that, but this is a part of the stadium series. You also have the, I guess this year was the Flyers and Devils, and then the Rangers and Islanders, and those were at MetLife Stadium there in New York. So this isn't a new concept, but it is cool. It's going to be at the Horseshoe of all places. And so, Garrett, get your little hockey 2 cents in here. What do you like, the stadium series?
I do. This year I was able to watch, and the only thing with the stadium series that happened this year, so you played the Flyers and the Devils played on Friday night, and that was really good. But when you got to Saturday's game, they played it at like 3, and there were a lot of issues with the glare coming off the ice. There was a lot of complaints really from the Rangers coming out about how they couldn't see and everything. So I think it's a great event, and that one had a massive turnout for both games. You also have like the Winter Classics this year. You had it in Calgary. I believe it was Calgary and Edmonton. That's a good turnout as well. So this should be fun. I think having it in a college football stadium and knowing what the environment we've seen from Ohio State football games, if you come anywhere close to that in this game, it'll be phenomenal. It'll be phenomenal.
Yep, so they've done 41. I think this might be 41 games they've done outdoors now over the course of the stadium series. But yeah, just a little college football tie in there with it being at the Horseshoe, March 1st, 2025. Book your tickets now, Blue Jackets and Red Wings. There's a few things off the radar.
JG Nielardo saying it's the best off the radar ever, and a few others.
Thank you.
Did you want to bring up Gus Cordova?
No, that's okay.
Okay, all right.
I do want to mention one thing. Have you guys seen the controversy about the Major League Baseball uniforms?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen how bad it's gotten?
Yes.
We can't show the pictures because I don't want to get us flagged.
The players bending over, stretching in the on-deck circle, and everything is showing.
Oh, really? I hadn't seen that.
Oh, no, the full meal deal.
Yeah, you're getting, there's a lot of nugget pouch
the nuts
going
and bolts.
on. Yeah. A lot of nugs.
I did read a story on that the other day. A lot of complaints. They, had some up close pictures that showed that the quality is just not up to snuff compared to what they've been wearing. And so, yeah, it looks a bit shoddy. And plenty of folks will say, well, that's Fanatics for you, because they've had dealings with Fanatics and merchandise over the years. But that is Fanatics. And there's been enough of a blowback that you do wonder if that's going to get corrected somehow, but I don't know that you can do much about it now because you're knocking on the door. But yeah, it's not a good look.
You got camel tail going on there, and that's no good.
Kim Coulter, I think Craig spent all night on this off the radar, and there were a couple other stories we didn't even get to.
Yeah.
But we will.
Thank you.
Every Tuesday and Thursday at 4:45. Mickey Spagnola just around the corner. Paul's top 5. I have to leave just a little bit early. I'm not going to leave, I don't think, in the next segment. My 85-year-old neighbor above me is having her windows replaced, and they need to get into my condo to get to the back of her condo. I thought it was going to be done this morning.
Okay.
I should just brought a ladder or something. So I might leave slightly early.
Just giving her the key. Just here, whatever.
She probably has one. All right, this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for your automotive needs, and people in this area and beyond who have come into Waco to buy a car from Richard Carr have been able to do that for 25 years now come March. So they're celebrating 25 years in business starting right now. A little bit early. The party's starting here in the month of February and rolling into that 25th anniversary next month with big anniversary sales savings, including thousands off GMC Sierra SLT crew cabs plus 1.9% financing for 72 months for qualified buyers as well. And if you're military or first responder, calendar, you're also in luck because you can save an additional $500 on top of what I already mentioned, and that is for those new GMC Sierra SLT crew cabs. And going over to the dealership and talk with their sales folks or just walk around and get a good look. And I drove by the other day because it's close to where I live, and a lot of that construction out on Highway 6, for those who are here and local, that's been just a massive mess. It's cleared out. Like, it's still ongoing, but at least getting to Richard Carr is easier than it's been in quite a long time. So no hassle there. Head on over, and they will be more than happy to greet you with the great customer service that I've experienced personally on more than one occasion from Donnie and company. So if you're looking for a brand new vehicle, check out the GMC Sierra SLT crew cabs. But if you want to drive something a little bit more worn in, but still top-notch, top quality, and with plenty of peace of mind attached, they trade for the best. So you can check out their lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks, which right now features 100 used cars and trucks, all inspected with a 172-point inspection, and comes equipped with the Richard Carr seal of approval, plus a financing goal that is 100% credit approval, as they say yes when others say no. So check out those deals and more with the business that's been in business for 25 years here in Central Texas. Richard Carr, run by proud Central Texas, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
TFNB, your bank for life, is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com. The auctions keep on being, from what I can tell, a great success, Samantha.
Yes, and they are so much fun. We have people that come out that have never been to any type of auction, and they have so much fun. You can hear and feel the energy in the room, especially when people are high-fiving each other when they've won a lot, or you can tell when people are just bummed when they didn't get that one and they're waiting for the next one, but the energy is just so awesome.
Your father said it's been so successful, you're looking at doing even more and more into the future. Is that correct?
That is correct. We don't have a date yet, but we're looking at maybe possibly sometime in April doing another one. And this one will again be a live auction along with being able to bid online for people that are not local.
Farm-raised, aged Wagyu beef. And now people can get it as they want it. The fact that they can control how much they buy and also how much they pay. How really cool is that?
What we like to call it is price discovery. So we don't want to put a price on our product. We want you to decide what you want to pay for our product. So you get to bid what you want to pay.
Samantha Duvall, the great company that continues to set the standard in the beef business at TexasBeefHouse.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul, Smokey, Craig here, and Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. Mickey, it is nearing free agency time and combine time and all of those things. The Cowboys are up against it cap-wise. They'll get under and they'll figure it out. But of the guys who are vulnerable, would you say maybe Michael Gallup post-June 1st, especially given the cap savings they could have, may not be back next year?
Well, I mean, that's always a possibility. They could always restructure the contract. But Yeah, I think the Cowboys got more things to worry about than the third wide receiver at this point.
Well,
now his salary, his salary's high, $13 million, right? And that's a lot if he's going to be the third wide receiver. So something has to be adjusted there. But again, you keep throwing money into dead money, and it catches up with you. Do you realize already this year, and we haven't even reached free agency, they've got $14 million in dead money going into the cap right now that they're over by $16 million. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, well, and the reason I picked him out is if you go to overthecap.com, something I know that you use because it's great. If you look at the, post June 1st cut, the left column of money that they'll be dead versus the right column of money that they'll save, that's usually the determining factor on guys who get cut. So if the money you're dead is way less than the money you'll save, then that usually means that's the guys who are in that danger zone, right? And Michael Gallup's is $4 million of dead money and $9 million in savings. So to me, that was why he was maybe one of the guys mostly in that danger zone.
But was it just dead money for this year, or is there dead money for next year too?
Hold on, I will tell you.
Because that counts.
Yeah. Okay. Dead money.
I mean, go ahead, and then I'll give you an
dead
example.
money for next year is also the same, but there's $11.5 million they would save on next year's cap as well.
Right. So, for example, everybody was, he can't pay Zeke that much money, right? Well, he had $8 million in dead money last year, and he's got another $6 million this year. So when you combine it, it's like, okay, did we really get ahead? Because now I'm paying that money for nothing. So again, there's always ways to restructure the base salary to be able to get out from, what probably looks like at this point a bad contract. And then, how did you know coming back from a torn ACL that's what it was going to come to? And somebody's got to take his place.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to spend money for that too, right?
Yep. Yeah, you do. We've talked about Ezekiel Elliott, and obviously his treads weren't the same, but what he did do is get the tough yards. If you needed 1.5, he could get you 1.5. There was an article today, Warren Sharp, who does a great job statistically, analytics, etc. The percentage of running backs whose runs did not gain yardage or lost yardage. And Buffalo had the number one overall, best. The Cowboys were 15th or so at 18%. Do you feel like, and I don't know what it was last year, I tried to find it, I couldn't, but do you feel like that might have been better had Zeke been a part of the backfield?
No, absolutely. I thought it all along before, he was even released. Everybody was clamoring, well, he's done, can't do this, can't do that. Well, he could get the tough yards, and rarely did he get stopped for no gain. So if you go back to last year, he was averaging right at what Tony Pollard finished at this year, 4.1 a carry, until Terrence Steele got hurt. After Terrence Steele got hurt, his average dropped to 3.8. Now, did he get worn out, or was the blocking not as good in the running game when you had to put somebody else there to take the place of Terrence Steele? So I was not for letting him go. I just thought he could serve a purpose. And even though they cut him, re-sign him to something like New England signed him to 3 years with, or $3 million with, playtime bonuses that if he played this much, he gets this much per game. I always thought the Cowboys should have done that.
Mickey, backup quarterback Cooper Rush has been very good for them when he's been called upon, but they did trade for Trey Lance last season, right before the regular season started. Do you envision a scenario where Cooper Rush is not back?
Well, I think there'll be some competition. Trey Lance, all he did last year was, he was on basically ran the scout team. Didn't get hardly any snaps with the offense. So I think this is going to be a very important offseason because he didn't have that last year, and a very important training camp and preseason games for him with the Cowboys because he didn't have any of that last year. He was just kind of in quarterback school, if you will. But again, you got to see it. You know what you got in Cooper Rush. What's this guy got? And then the other thing, and I always thought this was part of why they invested a 4th-round pick in him for him last year, was what if he shows out in training camp? What if he shows out in preseason games and some team gets desperate and needs a quarterback? You might be able to turn a 4th-round pick that you traded into a 2nd-round pick if you can hold the team hostage. So that's always a possibility, too. Now, Cooper Rush has 1 year left on his deal. And then, for them, I would imagine they would hope that he can show enough to maybe be the backup quarterback of the future. But we got to see it. We haven't seen it. I don't think you can go into training camp thinking, well, that's my backup quarterback, and we don't need Cooper Rush. Got to be careful on that.
Mickey, is this time of the year as dynamic, so to speak, with it was a franchise tag and all that? Is this as interesting as it's been in the past, or are people getting smarter, whether agents, players, or also the team?
Well, from a team standpoint, I think they're getting smarter. From a media standpoint, they're getting dumber because everybody's throwing mashed potatoes on the wall, hoping something sticks, right? And I think the people out there reading and listening have to understand who they trust. Because somebody was telling me today about, and I don't know where he got his information, but the Cowboys were the second choice to sign Mike Evans. They were second in trying to sign Stephon Diggs. And it's well, yeah, but no one knows if those guys are going to be free agents. We still got, 3 weeks to go before March 13th, 2 weeks, whatever it is. They could re-sign with their team. And how much is it going to cost? Because the Cowboys do have a salary cap, and they are $14 million over right now, and he hadn't even gotten to free agency. So I think people kind of get confused about the free agency part of it when they see the big name veterans, and who knows if they, get re-signed. And those two guys, I would imagine those teams want them back. But again, you never know, but you got to kind of wait to see until free agency begins. I believe it's March 13th. And then, you want to tie the Cowboys to this guy and that guy. Well, what do those guys want to play for? Because the Cowboys can't keep stuffing money into the future. And I know, and I just wrote about it for tomorrow, the all-in thing, but you got to have all to go in. And they really don't have a lot, and they've got a lot of things that they have to do. And think about it. Are the Cowboys one player away from going to, winning the NFC title game? They got a lot of players they got to replace. And I don't know that you can just say, got to go all in on this guy and he's going to turn everything around. Because the offense was pretty good, right? The quarterback did lead the league with 36 touchdown passes. Yet they couldn't get over the hump in the playoffs because the defense gave up 41 points.
Mickey, how much reasonably can people expect the Cowboys to get under the cap when it comes to doing all the things they have to do? Because they're not going to, get to a point where they wake up March 13th and they've got $50 million available. I mean, seeing as they started, I think like at 29 over, months ago, and now they've whittled it down about half of that. But where's the number you think that they'll be reasonably able to do things with when it comes to?
Well, yeah, that's kind of hard to project because, when you're over the cap, it's kind of a moving number, right? And they will be under, right? They will be under. I remember, gosh, and it might be 15, 20 years ago when I wrote a column on DallasCowboys.com saying, the Cowboys are so far over the cap when, say, March 13th shows up at 3:00, the bells are going to go off because they're so far over. Well, they got under, and the next day, Stephen Jones had read what I wrote, and he got a very cutely goes, "Did you hear any bells go off yesterday?" And I was like, okay, I've learned my lesson because you're not going to pay the fine to be over come March 13th. They will be under. And then it's a matter of, can you create some more space by restructuring guys' contracts and then paying them restructure bonus. But, of the 14 million that they're over right now, and I don't know if I got the number right when I said it before, but 12 million is restructure signing bonus in voided years for Zach Martin and Tyron Smith. $6 million each that they got to count for. So that stuff, the restructure thing sounds great, but it's like, pushing your payment on your credit card down the road, and then they charge you 28% interest.
Yep. It eventually ran the 90s Cowboys into the ground because they kept doing that with Aikman and others, and eventually just didn't have enough money, and they all got older. Mickey, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Mickey Spagnola, Cowboys, DallasCowboys.com with us on Thursdays, most every Thursday, either in or out of the season, in season or off season. Here's a note. Go ahead.
Here's what I'll just tell you. The Cowboys might have missed their window again because they to get under this cap and to replace all the guys that they're losing. Most of it's going to have to be through the draft. They actually don't have that many draft picks this year. That this is, it's.
You're never. Go ahead.
I can't wait to hear in about 3 months about how Dax reworked his contract and he's now making $80 million a year for 2 years.
That's what's going to happen. Is that it's going to happen before then because they've got to get under the cap, and that's the big thing.
There is no cap. Really. We hear that what the Rams do, right?
I heard Taylor Swift on a video say to Travis Kelce, he said, "How are you not jet lagged?" And she said, "Jet lag is a choice." Now, granted, she came over on a private jet and she got to sleep, but she did say jet lag is a choice, which I always admired. Which it also feels like this with the salary cap.
Yeah,
salary cap hell is a choice.
Yeah, it is, and some have experienced it. And some have found a way to get around it.
I don't think her and I are riding in the same planes or seats for that
we're
matter.
One of those
but I got it, Taylor.
One of those American Eagle. Nicole Arbach with this nugget. I had somebody today at the American Football Coaches Association tell me that this was discussed there yesterday among coaches about the signing period, and maybe in a few weeks there might be news. Today, Nicole Arbach, the early signing period is expected to move to earlier in December ahead of the opening of the transfer portal. It would begin the Wednesday before conference championship games, also looking at adding a summer signing period.
Yeah, there's a lot of details here that we probably don't have all the time to really dive as far as we want to, and plus it's still just being talked about. But yeah, December 4th, that would really set it up to where if you're not in a conference title game, you're pretty much free and clear to kind of get this done without nearly as much stress as what it was this past December. This past December, that was ridiculous, trying to cram it in the way that they did, as late as they did. So this would be a couple weeks earlier. And if you're in the conference title game, I still think you're a little bit strapped compared to others, but you're also in the conference title game, so you're doing okay for yourself. But something's got to change. That we can all acknowledge and agree on. And to what degree, some people feel like there should just be the old traditional signing day, but you got the portal involved in that. And this, I think, would allow for that early signing day as you get signed. And from a player's point of view, you don't have to worry about like the portal popping up and then your scholarship gets pulled because now they want to screw you over. Like you'd be able to sign and be done with it and not have to worry about that like late December, early January switcheroo on you. So that's one aspect of it. I guess that was in consideration for why they would move it up amongst some others. But yeah, that's something that needs to be done.
It's changing. It's movement. They're trying to get something done. Unlike Bill Hancock, who said, "Well, we have another month, and then it'll be another month." And another month when it comes to college football playoff and the TV deal and whatever else they decide to do. When we come back, Paul Catalina at his top 5.
Are you ready to conquer the road in style? Well, folks, you asked for it, and now you've got it. It's Ram Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco, and we've got some deals just for you. Get ready to roll with 0% financing for a whopping 72 months on the 2024 Ram 1500 Crew Cab Lone Star. But wait, there's more. We're slashing prices on all the 2023 Ram 1500 Limited Crew Cab 4-wheel drives. Get a jaw-dropping $15,000 off MSRP. Let's show some love to our brave first responders out there. As a token of our appreciation, first responders get an extra $500 off. And let's not forget the Ram 1500, the most luxurious and technologically advanced Ram 1500 ever. So don't miss out on these incredible deals during Ram Truck Month. Swing by Allen Samuels in Waco today and drive home in the truck of your dreams. But hurry, because these offers won't last long. Ram Truck Month is happening now at Allen Samuels.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verneau, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verneau, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 thoughts on further expansion in the college football playoff. We've kind of been through this, but, I think it bears kind of wrapping up and like putting these details out that people may not even quite realize. Number 5, if you go to 14 teams, only 2 teams have a bye. And guess who those teams will probably be? The SEC and Big Ten champion.
Most likely, yeah.
So it makes it, like 14 just seems like such a wonky number to me. It
does, yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And then you only get 2 teams with a bye, which, that'll be sold as like theoretically, if you're one of the top 2 teams, you'll get it. But honestly, that would be Georgia and Ohio State. Like that's who it's going to be all the time.
Well, you better say Michigan first nowadays.
Michigan. Yeah. I'm sorry, Michigan. Well, Harbaugh's gone, so I maybe defaulting.
They are the reigning champs, though.
They are.
And like 3 wins in a row. Is it over Ohio State now at this point?
Yeah.
I get you though.
Yeah, but they had to go deep into the well to get that, and now he's gone. I
think that it's, to me, that this most simplistic thing, and I know it's not probably what people want to see because they get further watered down, but 16 Everybody plays the same number of games on the journey there. Everybody gets the home field game. But I don't know. Like, you definitely, I would think, want to give like the number 1 team or number 2 team like some kind of benefit. So I guess that's where the 14 comes into play.
The NFL model, because the NFL has 14.
That is the NFL model, yes.
The NFL
so
model.
Maybe that's what they're striving for here, but that doesn't solve the problem of like those 2 teams not getting to host a home playoff game, which I would think that they would want, especially knowing like it's not like you're going to be.
14 they would, because the first 2 rounds would be at home sites. So
Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so maybe 14's, I don't know, but it seems like they're going to grow this thing again, right? I mean,
so let's go to a couple on 16. On 16, do all 4 P4s eventually, I should have said eventually, get 4 AQs as they start to push the G5 out? Like, that's what I wonder about this. Do you just say it's a 16-team playoff and these are the 4 we're taking, or do you do everybody gets 3 and then there's 4 at large? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't think that it'll ever be square with all 4 of those conferences. I think inevitably the SEC and the Big Ten, it's like I was saying earlier with the 16, I think under that format you'd probably have it with 4 for each of the SEC and the Big Ten, and then 2 each for the Big 12 and the ACC. And look, where are we with that in a couple of years? Is the ACC still around for all intents and purposes?
Yeah.
Is Florida State still in that league? Is North Carolina still in that league? I mean, that's something that we don't quite know just yet. And how much does the expanded playoff maybe calm that? But although it seems like Florida State's, I mean, that's just, I don't know. That's going to be interesting to watch. But if things stay status quo, then I think that you have to give the SEC and the Big Ten, just because of the whole political battle, some kind of leg up. So I would think that, yeah, they get like 4 apiece, the others get 2. And then I think you have to have some G5 representation, right? Like at least a team in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't not have like the Tulane of one year. I know Liberty left a bad taste in people's mouths because of the way they finished against Oregon and the schedule that they played. But yeah, I'll say to this, I don't think all 4 get the 4. I think that there would be some, like, where's Notre Dame fit in this case? They wouldn't have a spot even if they were eligible for it.
So they're also pulling the strings on this, so nothing's going to happen. But yeah. And
although I will say, like, the whole argument a couple days ago about, well, Notre Dame's going to squeeze out was an awful argument. Like, people just, I don't think were thinking that through. Like, they're going to be forced into a conference.
No, they wrote this.
Yeah, they helped write it, and it was some ridiculous takes out there on Notre Dame getting squeezed. But I will say that argument's not entirely extinguished just yet because, again, we need to see what happens with the ACC given their tie-ins there, but also because of the automatic qualifiers. Because if you gussied it up enough, then, yeah, you're leaving them, like, so many spots to try and get in, and that could be interesting if it really closed in around them. But that's about the only scenario I see.
I don't think Notre Dame's worried that they would never not be if they were in the top 12 and at large. They're like the schools that would get skipped over in that scenario if you had like the 4, like, you know, we have 4 automatic qualifiers and their 4th one is number 17. That school's not going to be Notre Dame.
Right.
Like, it's gonna be Kansas.
Right.
It's gonna be Arizona.
I'm still not a believer that they're getting forced into anything because I understand they haven't won a title in a long time and all that, but I don't think that really paints the whole picture of Notre Dame.
Own TV.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I just think I see that conversation pop up a lot, and it's popped up here this week as well. And so I just wanted to point that out, that if you did like 12 and then you had, 4 and 4 for the SEC and Big Ten, and then like 2 and 2 for the other 2, and like there's only 2 spots, I guess. But you want to guarantee a G5, and then boom, like there's 1 spot remaining, but still, it's still Notre Dame, and they're going to get in over anybody else. So that doesn't even really solve that.
Look, a conference that they're not in for football, therefore they should not get to make football decisions on in the ACC. Yeah. They told them to add Stanford and Cal,
right,
and they friggin' did it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how much power they have, because Notre Dame's like, you should add Stanford and Cal, and most of the people in the conference at first were like, we don't really think so. They don't really do anything for us, and there's a lot of travel. And Notre Dame's like, no, you should do it. And then they were like, all right.
I definitely don't agree with a lot of the Notre Dame notions out there, but I wanted to bring that up because I know that is part of the conversation. But, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they're being forced into anything. They helped create this bad boy. They helped the ACC expand, and so, yeah, they're going to have a place no matter what the AQs are and all of that. But, yeah, I don't think it'll be an all P4 tourney by any means.
All right, so here's an interesting thing. If they go to 16, the only teams out of the conference title game would get buys. So if you are, if you want to buy, you're better off not being one of the better teams in your conference. So the only teams that are going to get a week off are the ones who don't play in the conference title game.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because there would be no buys whatsoever.
Yeah, so 16, there's no buys at all. So the only teams that theoretically get buys, it ran out of space here. Too many things. But, like, that is the only way to not, like, if you really want that buy or whatever, well, come in third.
Yeah, that's something they're going to have to address and look at if they were to go to that. Right now, that's not a concern. But.
Which then creates an issue for the conference title games, and that you're going to have teams that are going,
well, maybe
well,
those
if we're in anyway. Yeah,
maybe those just go away. Maybe that's what happens. I think that's as much of a possibility to discuss as anything else, because
if you go to a 16-team playoff, then the revenue that you're losing for the conference title game can theoretically be replaced and maybe even improved on.
Right, because that's, again, what is that? What is the conference title game? What was the entire creation and the purpose of the conference title game?
Money.
More money. So, if you have a bigger playoff and now you don't really need that conference title bag, then you could move on from those let the last man standing, I guess, declare themselves the real, or whoever finished in the regular season the highest, especially with how big these conferences are at this point. So, maybe conference title games go to the wayside as a result of that, if you were to go to 16, which, again, has not happened just yet.
No. Number 2, how can the Big 12 and ACC benefit from this at all? Like, how can they benefit from the expansion? I'm not saying that they won't. I'm saying that these two conferences in particular, and the ACC's got equally big fish to fry in trying to keep themselves relevant with teams wanting to leave. So how can they stay in this, and how can they benefit from this? How do you get something that's going to help you and not just be a bone from the other two?
Yeah, I think
it's a tough, like, it may be just rhetorical right now.
It is.
But like,
in some ways it is. I think the way you could benefit, I mean, from a Big 12 point of view, I think if you could get your 2 automatic qualifiers, and especially if, conference title games go to the wayside, because I think that could kind of leave a bad taste if you're taking 2 from the Big 12, but that would automatically, wouldn't it not mean probably the loser in the conference title game would automatically get in after losing? So I don't think that's really that good of a look for any league to have your loser then still go make the playoff, unless it's a scenario where it's like a massive upset or something. But I think they could benefit by securing a couple of automatic qualifiers at minimum. I don't know that they'll get more than a couple, but that's the first step, is to at least guarantee that. But beyond that, I don't know how they stand to benefit, because if the other 2 leagues are going to still be getting more teams in, that's also more money. And so the money gap just increases. It doesn't close necessarily. And so, I don't know where you stand to benefit all that much outside of just ensuring that you have a couple of your best teams are going to get a crack at it. And you know what? The best thing, and we've said this for the Big 12, the ACC is different, because the ACC's got some questions right now as far as their bigger brands go. The Big 12 in its current iteration, when anybody asks, like, how can they improve? How can they get more respect? How can they do that? Folks, the answer is just go win. I mean, that's bottom line, is go win. If TCU had beaten Georgia, how many conversations are drastically different about a lot of different things? And so that's what you have to do, is go and just win, and win as much as you possibly can. That's about all you can do.
Yeah. I do feel bad that, like, I feel like this was a year that TCU, like, if you took this TCU playoff team and put them in the final against Michigan, who they did beat, but, like, at least it's a game that would not have been 65-7. Like,
it's just, Georgia was so freaking good,
they're just so good. Like, that's one of the, like, that, 2022 Georgia team is up there with, the top 10 greats of all time.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, as far as
the dominance and just how good they were, and draft picks and all those different types of things. Yeah, I mean, they ran into a buzzsaw, and I don't know, maybe Michigan would have played them better, but it doesn't matter. TCU beat Michigan, and they beat them with their style and with TCU style, the explosive plays and just making some plays on defense. And Michigan made it a game, but TCU won, and then had the unfortunate task of going on this huge stage and playing this just monster of a team that Kirby Smart had put together. And but I think the Big 12, ACC, again, it's you got to go win, got to go get some teams in that final, and hopefully get somebody over the top and win one here and there.
Yeah. And number 1, how long does the G5 actually get a team in? Like, how long? Like, this is my question. Every time we hear things like this, it's just they should be making notes of, all right, well, what's our plan B? Like, how do we do this? Because I just worried that there's going to eventually be a point where, like, listen, we let you guys have your fun for a little while. We were happy to have you in it. But ultimately, no one wants this.
It's not you, it's us.
It's not, yeah, exactly. We have to move on from you, which I think sucks because it gives them, but like how long before they do get shoved out? Because they spent so long fighting their way in.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, and I don't know that they even know what the answer to that is right now. I would like to think that as long as the Big 12 and the ACC remain involved, that there would be at least a spot, right, for your G5 best-ranked team. I think that if you want to maintain the whole status quo of everybody being included, even if we know it's slanted in certain directions or weighted more heavily in other directions, that you at least there's that door of opportunity. That's all everybody asks for, right? So it may be one door for 100-plus teams, but you do know that Tulane or a Liberty or an SMU, if they had a special year, or just so on and so forth, that you at least have, well, SMU doesn't even count now, my bad, they're in the ACC. But you get what I'm saying. If you have a special type of year that you could have that opportunity, but yeah, I don't know how attractive that first-round game with the Georgia versus in a 16-teamer, like Georgia versus Liberty, I don't know how much the networks are going to really want to pay for that. So that's a question that I think has yet to find an answer, but certainly will be amongst the discussions moving forward.
Absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for us. We're back in tomorrow. Craig and I here tomorrow. Smokey is off, and we'll have, college football and sports talk galore for you. 3 hours of just pure joy. That's what we do here at 365 Sports. Don't forget, if you're here in Waco on the CW tonight, 10:30, we've got 365 Sports tonight. Thanks to Garrett Ross. Thanks to all our guests. Thanks to all of you on the chat, all of you who tuned in today. We're back again tomorrow at 3. See you then, everybody.